OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right. A very good morning to you this Monday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Colin is here.
Sure, good morning.
Shane is here.
Good morning.
Shane, how are you?
You know what? The Rhino Tool celebration, lads. Cash money.
Is that what he did? I missed it.
He was running away and he started doing the little rubbing the notes together sign.
Kerching, kerching.
Exactly. We're in the money. Who knows what it meant? But you know what? It looked cool. Very, very cool.
Who is he? Is he a rock star?
He's a rock star, it turns out. Young lad from Scottstown. Well able to speak as well after the match. You gotta live in the moment. You gotta live in the moment, folks. Rhino Tool lived in the moment. We will get to that. I do want to talk a lot about it.
We will, and it's obviously Monaghan are in the green. We're going to get to that in just a second. How's everybody's weekend?
Gee, Succession's very good.
Don't say a word.
Yeah, same.
I'm way behind all of you.
Okay,
way behind. As usual.
I am angry. I am Stewie Byrne levels of angry about the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail last week on their front cover. On their front cover.
Unforgivable.
Absolutely unforgivable. And they're banned from this show for at least a week.
I can't go online as a result of this.
Well, I muted every word. That was available on Twitter, and it still didn't prevent. Now, I was like skeptical enough in my own mind to be able to still discover something in whatever, but I'm not going to speak about it anymore because it's just we can't. No, because I immediately turn off everything. So you're literally making people turn off.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm just saying there was a scene in early parts of the series. I was going to send it to you over the weekend, but I said no, I'll leave you alone. But I was like, this is one of the best bits of acting I've ever seen ever.
Well, you can say that because it's
I
mean, Jeremy Strong and Sarah Snook, like there's a scene that they have together.
People don't know their names of the people, the characters.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to give anything away, like you said.
What season?
I don't want to give anything away.
What season is this?
It's the start of season 2, and it's just this. I watched the scene like 6 or 7 times back. It's just incredible. The acting, it's just I can't get over it. So what I do then is I type in the actual episode review and then only read content from the date of the publication. So if it's back in 2018-19, I know there'll be no spoilers. But you can't go on YouTube because the comments will give it away.
That's fair. Gotta be wise with these things, folks.
Thankfully, we have a busy show.
You wanted to get that off your chest.
All right.
Yeah, I'm glad you work away.
I was in Dingle at the weekend.
Oh.
Doing Ride Dingle, which is...
What's that?
Hey, it's a cycle. It's called Ride Dingle, though.
Okay.
Just
good name.
And there's 2 cycles. There's one that goes out around, is it Slayhead? And then the second one takes you up over the Connor Pass. I signed up to do the whole Connor Pass thing, but hadn't done enough training for it, so I was uncertain about whether or not I was going to do it. And at the end of the 56-kilometre cycle, you get back into Dingle, and there's a really steep hill to get you up. And at that, I actually cramped in my thighs, which I didn't know you could cramp.
Learning new things about your body.
Exactly. Took a little bit of a break anyway, and come down, and they're like, okay, left, go down the hill for Connor Pass, down the hill for Connor Pass. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give this a go. Got to the bottom of the hill and looked up, and it was just this kind of endless cycle, and I was like, absolutely not, no way. So I made the very, very smart decision to go home and get into bed, and huddled for about an hour until kick-off at 12:30, which was perfect time for Aston Villa against Newcastle,
perfect.
which we are going to talk about.
Yeah, recuperate. So the legs feel okay today, Ger?
But
56k around Dingle is worse than 56k around Berlin.
Do you know Dingle and the Connor Pass?
I know the Connor Pass. I was just thinking, what are your discomfort levels on the Connor Pass?
I couldn't do it because I made the mistake of driving in, not the normal way.
Yeah.
I drove up the Connor Pass to get into Dingle.
Yeah.
And I was like nearly puking.
It's terrifying.
But imagine going on that, you come down that bit on the bike.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not doing this. And there's no way I could do this. I would die. And I'm nearly dead now after only having done the 50 something as opposed to doing the 120.
Yeah.
Next year I will go back and do the 120.
Lycra, Ger, we wearing Lycra?
Of course.
Yeah, mammal. You're a mammal.
You got to accept who you are, Shane.
You do. You got to lean into it.
Why would you like? I'm not scared of that.
Fair.
Yeah, that's exactly. I am a middle-aged man, and I wear lycra when I'm cycling, purely for comfort, Marge. Purely for comfort.
Yeah, no chafing.
Well, there is.
Well, of course, there's chasing.
There's always chafing, Shane. Do we want to be totally honest about this at 7:30 on a Monday morning?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Talcum powder.
No, talcum powder's carcinogenic, so
Okay.
don't be using talcum
use
powder.
that then. Sorry.
7:35 this morning. Weird tangents. Is there a flaming version of red for Ireland women's rugby? Asked Fergus Gill. Oh, we're about to find out. It is time at 7:35 for the Gillette Labs performance rankings. I'll tell you about what's coming up later on in the show, but you know it's going to be football, rugby, GAA, and everything else.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Boom. Okay, coming up we have Alison Miller, Daniel Harris, Alan Quinlan and Anthony Moyles. Take it away, Shane.
Yeah, well, you said it already. We're going to start with women's rugby, and I'm not going to use the word abysmal performance, but abysmal result, maybe, I think, probably sums it up quite well. 24-7 defeat for Ireland to Italy and Parma. And it looks like a wooden spoon showdown with Scotland in a couple of weeks' time. But first, it's going to be a round 4 game against England next Saturday, April 22nd. And you'd be little bit concerned, I think, about that game. The match of the weekend, Ireland early on, I think you can agree, would dominate possession, dominated territory. But they just couldn't finish. The line-out was very poor, woeful, you might say. And Greg McWilliams, after the match, used the word clinical a number of times, and the lack of clinical finishing from this Irish team, they just couldn't seem to get over the whitewash at any stage with any conviction. Put passes together. There doesn't seem to be a winger in the team that can really take players on either. He made 3 changes to the lineup for the previous game, but there's so much inexperience, and this point was made on television and in plenty of punditry around the game afterwards. Clearly this Irish team don't have as many caps as maybe some of the other teams in the Six Nations this year, and yet
that's a choice, though. We should point out that they're picking players who have fewer caps than picking players who have more caps, who could have added some experience, and they could have chosen not to have the inexperienced team be lambs to the slaughter in the way. So that's not that's a strategy that they have decided on, and that's their choice and that's their responsibility.
Even the try yesterday was a penalty try. They've got 15 points in total in the Six Nations so far, which is really poor. Greg McWilliams, speaking afterwards, he was like, I can't fault the effort of the players. They've been outstanding. We look at what we have to do to get better. This was the theme of his post-matches as well. We need to continuously get better, and that's what we ask of our players. I'm very proud of them coming away from home losing. I know how they feel. He referenced some positives from yesterday as well. Nicola Friday speaking up in the dressing room. Sam Monaghan and Lauren Delaney he pinpointed and named as well as players that had decent performances. And he said he had to say very little in the match beforehand or at half time, but maybe more needs to be said now because the performances just haven't been good enough.
Totally. And the fact that, like you say, Shane, the try was a penalty try, you know, and like how Ireland didn't score in the stoppage time in the first half when they were on the cusp of the Italian try line and then dropped it themselves, and that summed it all up. And like even just like very basic statistics, like last year Ireland won this game 28-3. They've won 19 of their previous 22 encounters with Italy, and to be beaten so comprehensively, like Alyssa Dinka had a field day out wide and could have scored more than her 2 tries. And just the fact that there's no real cohesive plan in attack, or there's no off-the-cuff plan, there's no ingenuity, spark of individualism and creativity out wide or even in the centres, and just the constant change and even half-back partnerships, there's just real no cohesion. The only thing you could say about this Irish team is that they have great spirit and work rate, but like how sick are we of saying that about Irish sporting teams in a global scale over the years? You know, we're going way beyond that, and unfortunately you look at the men's Irish team, you look at the women's Irish team, and you can't help but compare where they are, and it's just like, you know, we were saying in the pre-show meeting, and like, you know, Kathleen McNamee herself was pointing out, like, there's been a lot of positivity since this result, and really we should be way more honest with ourselves and not even patronise ourselves to the fact that like this is nowhere near good enough, and it goes to show that we're miles away from where we should be.
The point is as well, wasn't the ambition beforehand? We previewed the Women's Six Nations, and and I think Greg himself had said that the ambition was to finish third. They're so far off being the team just behind England and France that it's just like you worry that the game against England next weekend is going to be seismic in terms of result. Ireland are not going to win that game. Let's not kid ourselves here.
Oh, the spread could be 70-80 points.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that they could lose by over 100 points. You'd like to think there aren't enough minutes in the match for that to happen, but performance-wise, things just need to improve. They can't carry the ball. It's just individual errors at different points, and I don't want to be too harsh because I know that there's a lot of young girls in that team, and there were positives that Greg McWilliams rightly mentioned, like Delaney and Sam Monaghan, and Derla Nicavard was brilliant as well in parts. So look, there are bright shoots there.
There aren't bright shoots. They're not bright shoots.
A lot of the bright shoots
they're not bright shoots though. That's just like I think we shouldn't fall into the trap of saying there's nothing. There's actually nothing for them to hang their hat on after a performance like this.
Well, the bright shoots are in the sevens, aren't they? There are bright shoots. They're maybe not in the squad for one reason or another. And we know there's plenty happening off the pitch in Irish women's rugby that needs to be addressed as well. And we have addressed it in the show plenty of times. But it just leaves you wondering where and when things are going to improve.
Well, you can't separate the two, the off pitch and on pitch. It's
one is a result of the other.
This is what's happening. They're bright. Like Aoife Dalton was very good. Sam Monaghan was good, and like I said, the team spirit was good. But like it's nowhere near good enough. And the worry, like you say, tonight, the spread against England could be absolutely terrifying. England absolutely annihilated Wales.
I can't find it at the moment. I'm sure the bookmakers are desperately trying to
31-5. You know what I mean? So if you want to do basic logic, you want to look away this weekend. And there's what can I get from this weekend? It's probably improved displays in the back line, and just a bit some sort of cohesion in attack would be promising to see. But really, you're looking for anything inside 50 points, and that's depressing saying that.
Italy weren't even great. It's not like we're looking at an Italy team here they're really drastically improving. Italy weren't fantastic. This wasn't a team that just blew us away. Ireland only conceded 6 penalties, I think, across the 80 minutes, which is ordinarily, if you'd said that before the game, you're thinking, well, Ireland are going to win this match. Discipline is clearly going to be good, but didn't matter about discipline, really. And the discipline at the line-out, I don't know what the hell is going on in practice in terms of line-outs, but...
well, the Italy line-out wasn't great either, but it was just Ireland's worse.
Yeah. Set pieces generally... set pieces generally were okay, but definitely not line-outs.
All right.
You'd be concerned.
This is bad. It's getting worse. There's no sign of it improving, and it's going to be a long, slow, hard slog back to respectability as opposed to a winning culture.
Do you understand Greg McWilliams' positivity afterwards? Do you understand what he was trying to do?
I think that he has no choice. He can't come out and go, this is abysmal, and
he's the only person who can't.
It's going to get worse. It's a very difficult situation because the article came out last week and I didn't hear any significant rebuttal from so he came out and was like, oh, this is all historic, but I didn't hear anybody else from the IRFU coming out. I haven't seen the chief executive come out, and there hasn't been an open press conference where David Nucifora sits alongside the new chief executive and everybody comes out and says, these are our plans. This is what we're going to do. It's an open forum. You can ask us anything and we will deal with whatever it is. Look at what happened in the Welsh Rugby Union. They just want to be very careful that the situation doesn't get out of hand, that the difficulties that are being expressed are openly addressed and honestly and transparently addressed, as opposed to saying, oh, this isn't true. These are suggestions that there is sexism rife within Irish rugby in the wider terms, that they begin to address that, because otherwise you can't. The results are a manifestation of a decade and a half long attitude and treatment of the game. That's the reality of the situation, and until they actually come out and say, fundamentally, we have changed as an organisation and we are still on a transformation journey. We're not finished. We have loads and loads to go. Then you're not going to see any uptick in performances. And individual green shoots or whatever of single individual performances are just going to... They'll be swamped by the culture.
Well, it feels like an Irish women's soccer Liberty Hall moment that has not yet been addressed. That is...
Well, that should have been the letter to the Irish Times at that time. Was it the Irish Times, or was it just a general public letter? Or was it however it leaked, right? That should have been the moment where they were like, okay, this is an opportunity for us. But instead, it's been, I don't know. And we've invested loads of money, and we've got individuals whose job it is to fix this, as opposed to actually culturally, we've got this entirely wrong. And also, the sevens thing is that's a choice. Their strategy was to send the sevens team off to qualify, and they haven't qualified yet. And as a result, what the the 15s performances, which are on terrestrial TV and being watched by everybody, they're getting swamped. And you're like, okay, well, you made the decision to prioritise the 7, so let's wait and see. Anyway, look, we're coming back to this in about 15 minutes' time, so let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on, and we're moving on to Newcastle and Spurs. Couple of teams that let themselves down a little bit at the weekend. I know we're going to touch on Chelsea as well, Colin, I think. But the Newcastle game is probably a chance for us to big up Aston Villa as well, Ger, don't worry. Brilliant performance by Villa. Newcastle, you'd be concerned. I'm just looking at the table here. So you have Newcastle and United still driving seat, you'd have to say, for those top 4 places. But Tottenham losing as well just would concern you. Ollie Watkins with the 2 goals for Villa at the weekend, Jacob Ramsey with the other. Villa have won 5 straight Premier League games for the first time since when?
2009?
1998.
Wow.
Which is a bit insane.
Who's manager? John Gregory?
Could well have been. One of those lads. There's a lot of Villa managers you might forget
I thought they had great ones under Martin O'Neill.
It's
I think they've 5 wins in a row, though. That's it's proper leaping up the table territory.
Well, true.
Villa in the first half were as good as I've seen them. Like the atmosphere at 12:30 on Saturday morning was absolutely sensational, and they completely controlled the game. In the second half, at the start of the second half, Newcastle came out and started to cause a bit of trouble. Martinez had to make a few saves, and it's even kind of slightly better than that. At half time, I was like, this is a transformational moment for Villa, where whatever happens, the control that they've showed, the creativity they've showed, the quality of football they've showed, they're not going to go back. And then you're a little bit worried about, maybe, but then they just come out and swat them aside. Yeah. And it was absolutely sensational. Like, it wasn't just Watkins, it was the whole team. It was players who've been dropped at various stages. Even Emery has dropped some of the players, and now they're back in the team, and they're like John McGinn's arse, like one of the great sights in world football, and it's in full glorious flow in that second half in particular. Did a goal disallowed for like a hair's breadth of an offside as well. Yeah. And that would have been a hat-trick for Watkins if that one had stood, and he'd scored the 2 after that as well. But it was an astonishing performance, and it's an astonishing performance by Unai Emery. And this is the one dark cloud on the Aston Villa horizon here, is that Unai Emery is so bloody good that Chelsea must be looking at him going, well, hang on a second, he's 3rd in the table since the start of November. Yeah. What? Why is he 3rd in the table? What's he doing? Let's just get him. Now, I don't think Unai Emery would be... if you were counselling him, would you go to the basket case that is one of those other clubs?
Not a chance.
You got to stick with Villa now, because the since Unai Emery arrived, start of the season table, they're just behind Manchester City and just behind Arsenal.
Yeah, 12 wins out of the 18 games he's been in charge in the Premier League. Like, I was at Emery's first game in charge at Villa Park, and that was the win over Manchester United, and you're thinking straight away, well, could be new manager bounce, but fair play, good result. Turns out it was not a new manager bounce, because
they're 3 points behind Spurs.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Well, like, they're legitimately, I actually think Brighton are probably more legitimately in the conversation for finishing top 4 at the moment. And that's why the Evan Ferguson injury is actually more concerning for them than just the semi-final of the FA Cup. But like, Villa have managed to shoot themselves. If this was any other team, if Liverpool had gone on the run, right, that Villa are on at the minute, everybody like, ooh, they're still a dark horse for Champions League football here. Yeah. But like, they're actually a dark horse for Champions League football here, because they just annihilated Newcastle.
If they keep winning, and if Ollie Watkins keeps scoring, what is he? 11 of his 14 goals this season have come in the last 12 games. He's just a man on fire. Unai Emery turned down the Saudis. He rejected approaches from Newcastle.
He was their first choice.
So this could have worked out a hell of a lot differently.
Imagine how Eddie Howe felt mid-afternoon on Saturday. I've just lost to the manager who was first choice for the job I'm in. Yeah. You want to have a lot of self-belief.
Essentially. So what he's done at Aston Villa is just quite remarkable. And their rise continues. I know we said we're talking about Newcastle here because they're the ones in the red this morning, but
we just had no room for Villa in the green. But exactly. Villa are 100% in the green. I do think Newcastle can recover from this, but it is one of those bits where actually the big result of the weekend from top 4 perspective, I don't think Villa are going to make top 4, just for the record, right? But they have suddenly shot themselves into consideration for that 4th spot. I think now Manchester United are going to be grand. And that's why their win yesterday, and that's why that handball is actually a massive decision that's going to, ultimately make Man United loads of money. Yeah. It's good for the Premier League to have a good, strong Man United, isn't it?
Ah, yeah.
What an important global brand they are, and that's why they always get those results.
The other team in the red is Tottenham. The dramatic 3-2 defeat against Bournemouth. Dango Ouattara with a beautiful goal, a little bit of a Federico Macheda vibe to the goal. A player that hasn't been used too much, and it was a similar kind of finish, cut inside and curl it in with the right hand foot into the bottom right corner. Bournemouth now, when you look at the table, they are 33 points with 31 games played, so they're 6 points ahead of Forest in the relegation zone, and same amount of games played as Forest as well. So those points on the board could be massive, and all of a sudden Gary O'Neill and what he's doing at Bournemouth, you have to be impressed. But how could anyone be a Tottenham fan and still be happy in their regular day-to-day lives? I just don't know. They just let you down constantly. When Heung-min Son opens the scoring, you're thinking, well, this is going to be a good day for Tottenham. It just wasn't a good day for Tottenham, and the performance wasn't great. Richarlison's lack of goals is really starting to come to the fore now as well. You'd just be concerned, and you look at the table and that top four battle, you wouldn't back Tottenham to finish top four at the moment, certainly form-wise.
How are they still as high as 5th?
I know.
How were Aston Villa 3 points behind them? It just goes to show what was happening under Stephen Gerrard at Villa, because Unai Emery's doing such an unbelievable job. By the way, does English football owe Emery an apology after his treatment when he was Arsenal boss? He got a lot of criticism at that time. He's really showing him now.
I was just reading back over the record. He did okay, but then had a really bad transfer window, and the team stuttered at the start of the next season. So that one bit that you'd be concerned about is just making sure that they sign the right players, because there's not going to be a huge margin for error for Villa to click into that top 6 proper next season. But very exciting. Brighton, if they win their game in hand, will be on 52 points. Which would be 4 behind Newcastle. Can they catch them?
No, I don't think so. But Newcastle Spurs this weekend.
So, why could Brighton not catch Newcastle?
I think Newcastle will, as you say already, I think they'll react to that. I think that was a proper off day against Villa, and they'll make amends. And I just don't think Brighton are going to catch them up. Having said that, wouldn't it be the biggest shock in the world if they did? I mean, they were stupendous against Chelsea. Again, another brilliant performance with Brighton. But I think Newcastle have a lot of muscle memory from how they recovered this season. Look at the League Cup final. They were insipid in that game, and they weren't great going into that match, and they've been very good since then. Don't think they're going to let it slip. In terms of finishing above Brighton, I mean, I'm still like, geez, like, who's going to get that 4th place? Like you said, Manchester United, I think, are safe now, just looking at the table here in front of me. And then you are looking at, like, Liverpool are probably too far behind now. They're 5 points behind Brighton in 8th. Brentford have slipped away completely. So then you're looking at Brighton, Villa, Tottenham, Newcastle.
Liverpool have to win their 2 games in hand to be level with Villa.
Yeah. I mean, like, from experience alone, you'd say Liverpool should get a 4th, but
how many seasons do we get a title race, a top 4 battle, and a relegation battle?
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant. The Premier League this season's been excellent.
We
really
are
has.
so lucky this season to have that. I think what summed up the Spurs' performance the weekend was Davinson Sanchez's performance. He was on the pitch for 23 minutes, replaced then by Danjuma. Hugo Lloris spoke about it afterwards. He was booed by the fans. I've never seen this in my career. Lloris says, I feel really bad for Davinson. He's a teammate, he's a friend, he's been fighting for the club for many, many years now. The story is sad for the club, the fans and the players. So when you see players like Davinson Sanchez getting booed by the fans, you know things aren't right at Tottenham. And Christian Stellini said during the week, we have to approach every single one of our last 8 games or whatever it was in the Premier League like a final. And then they go into the match against Bournemouth and they lose 3-2. So concerns. But Newcastle and Spurs, I think, deservedly.
I think they should replace Stellini till the end of the season. I think they should get someone in.
Company is the favourite.
No, I think between now and the summer, like, for the last 7 games.
Yeah.
I think they should get someone. I don't think they're going to get 4th under Stellini. I think they should be working now to get
Daniel Levy is working
in.
on that at this moment. Like,
I don't know, but what he was announced for the rest of the season, but like the Newcastle game's approaching, they have the rest of this week to sort that out. I think they'd be mad not to look for an alternative to help Stellini even.
Make a change. Do you want to move on to Amber? We're still talking football.
Go ahead.
We've got a bit of Arsenal action.
Sorry, quick one. Any news on Evan, lads? Asks Chris Cal in no specific news. An ankle injury, multiple weeks is what De Zerbi is saying. Fairly similar to the language that they used after his previous ankle injury. So
2 to 3 seems to be the suggestion.
Yeah, it's a massive shame. FA Cup semi-final.
Nothing official, and so you would hope that there's some possibility.
But how good was he? Hits the crossbar with a brilliant effort. Ferguson nearly scores when he gets injured, and he was excellent. They were 1-0 down when he went off. Welbeck scored. His replacement scored within 3 minutes of coming on the pitch, but Ferguson was tearing Chelsea apart. And Match of the Day was noting how much they were rating this young man, Evan Ferguson.
Yeah.
And like we were saying last few weeks, like is he going beyond the Irish analysis of, oh my God, we have a Robbie Keane replacement? And it seems to be like the rest of the football world is starting to notice that this teenager seriously has a future.
Yeah, Brighton's scouting is obviously better than everybody else at the minute because they've got 2 teenagers at the moment.
Oh my God, that goal.
If they could keep them together for
Thiso.
the next couple of years.
And he hit the post.
You'd be like, all right, things are going to be pretty good for these.
Yeah. Ferguson should go nowhere. De Zerbi should go nowhere. Keep this project alive. It's only getting going. Don't go anywhere.
Turns out scouting works. Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the, honestly, goal of the season contenders in Cecil's finish, because if you look at it, he takes one touch and the ball's going away from him to the right, so that's a really tough shot to pull off, because you can easily scuff that near a post, but the trajectory of it, it was beautiful.
One for the cameras.
Soared up.
Yeah. We'll go to the Amber. We'll go to Arsenal, because another 2-goal lead that just dissipated quite quickly against West Ham at the weekend for Mikel Arteta and his team. He says afterwards, we have to remember we are still top of the league with everything in our own hands. And Martin Odegaard kind of echoing those sentiments as well after the game. Some people already writing off Arsenal are saying this is a sign of mental fragility. This is a sign that they're not ready for a battle for the title, and this is a sign that they're not experienced in terms of winning a title, whereas Man City are. But I wouldn't be that concerned just yet. I know they had the 2-goal lead. The Saka penalty was fairly brutal.
That's a turning point of the season.
The penalty.
Oh my God, that was for 3-1 minutes later, it was 2-2.
Yeah, things can happen quite quickly in football.
Manchester City are going to win the league.
They're
going to win the league.
Yeah, there's no way they should be an amber. It's just that we didn't have enough reds, right?
Oh, it's extremely dark amber. It's to the point where you're looking from a distance. It's like, that's red.
Lads, hold on a minute here.
No, what are you talking about, Shane? Come on.
Like they still have to play Man City.
Exactly.
Which gives them an opportunity.
That's the worry. That's the worry. Exactly. That's a Wednesday week.
They've got Southampton at home on Friday night.
Yeah.
What a game to bounce back.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The perfect fixture to bounce back.
Yeah.
So get the win there and go into the Man City game with a little bit of renewed vigour and confidence. Surely, I know it's at the Etihad. I understand that, but Arsenal are still in the box seat. Look at the table. Like Arsenal, 4 points clear of City. City have a game less played.
Exactly.
It is going to come down to that.
Look at the goal difference. City are far superior. There's no way that Jack Grealish isn't talking to Roy Keane the last day of the season and reflecting on another title win. They've blown it. I thought Arsenal did brilliantly at Anfield. I thought the 2-2 was fair enough, because they could have lost that game with Konate. If Konate's chest was a bit stronger, Liverpool would have won that game 3-2. But yesterday, in title terms, is unforgivable.
Arsenal are only focused on the Premier League, lads. City have the Champions League. City have the FA Cup. It will matter.
That's worse. They have no distractions, Arsenal. They're out of all the cups.
But
they lost the Sport. They should never have lost the Sporting. And now all they have to think about is, oh my God, we've lost 4 points from our last 2 games. Like, that's all they're thinking about.
What if Erling Haaland pulls a hamstring or does his Achilles in a Champions League?
Julian Alvarez.
Doesn't matter.
They have so much going for them. Grealish is in the form of his life. Riyad Mahrez isn't even starting, and he's excellent. There's not a world where Arsenal win the title.
City have clicked. It's game over.
10
should
wins in a row.
Should have been in the red here, as I said.
Yeah.
This is red, all red.
It's not all doom and gloom, Arsenal fans. Don't listen to these.
It is. I'm sorry. They've got Champions League football to look forward to next season. They're going to be able to sign whoever they want, and it's a big deal. It's a step up the ladder, and there's still enough crisis at the other clubs to make you think at the start of the season they will be Manchester City's nearest title challengers next year. But it's game over.
The question is, has it been a brilliant season for Arsenal? They would have obviously taken second at the start of the season, but the way it's gone, it's a disappointing season. That's the debate that we're having on Sky Sports yesterday. Roy Keane, Gary Neville, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. Neville in the camp of good season for Arsenal. The 2 lads saying they've ruined it.
Let me paint you a very quick picture. So Arsenal, as I said, 4 points ahead with a game extra played. Arsenal beat Southampton this Friday. They go 7 points clear of City with 2 games extra played. They go into next week, midweek, with 2 games extra played, but a 7-point advantage. Mm-hmm. Get a draw at the Etihad. Just get a draw, right? Then you're 7 points clear. Still. Relax, Arsenal fans. Just get a draw at the Etihad. You can get a draw. Even if you go 2-0 up, you'll end up drawing 2-2, because that's what Arsenal do.
I go as far as to say, even if Arsenal don't lose at the Etihad, that City will still win the league.
If Arsenal, okay.
I think Arsenal will slip up elsewhere.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
It's in their heads now.
Yeah, fair. I'll take your point, but I still think the title race is on. I'm trying to be optimistic for Arsenal fans out there.
The other thing, I saw somebody at 2-0 going, "Ooh, this is a real good opportunity for Arsenal to close that gap in terms of the scoring difference." It's like, that tweet didn't age very well, did it?
If teams are thinking about scoring difference, then they're in a bad place. You got to be points on the board, lads. Forget about the goals. Just win the game.
I know we have to move on, but Arsenal were brilliant at the start of the game, just like they were against Liverpool. So they have all the talent in the world. It's just the mental side. It's probably too early for them to win the league with this squad. They could do it again next year. second isn't a bad result.
Well, everybody said the same thing about Spurs when they pushed Leicester, and that never happened. You know, you've got to take the window of opportunity when it arrives. And also, there was a flakiness around Man City at the start of the season when they were trying to work out how to make Erling Haaland work. That might not be there next season. City might start next season with 15 wins, and like the season will be over by Christmas, and we'll be like, oh, yeah, that was a kind of weird situation, wasn't it? Where actually there was an opportunity for somebody else to win the league who isn't Man City.
Yeah, true. I have more faith in this Arsenal side, though. I do.
Than Spurs.
Yeah, I do. I think they have a brilliant squad. No, Spurs had an excellent squad
next season they're going to have Champions League football week in, week out.
But they'll improve their squad, I think.
Yeah, they'll have to improve it massively.
Yeah. All right.
Let's go to the green. And a woman who has been so close, and one of those mentions that are we going to her first?
Yeah.
Rashida Adeleke. Deservedly so. The Tala 20-year-old, what a weekend for her. Just a day after breaking her Irish 200 metre record, what does she go and do? She becomes the first Irish woman to run below 50 seconds for the 400 metres. She's only taken up the 400 metres very, very recently in comparison to a lot of runners out there that she's competing against in these races. And the fact that she was able to run so fast. So this was at the Tom Jones Memorial Invitational in Florida. Not that Tom Jones, I don't think. She was running for the University of Texas. She runs 49.90, finishing second behind Britton Wilson. That was an American runner who beat Adeleke back in March over a similar distance. It took 0.43 off her previous best for the distance, which was also the Irish record. That was back in February. So she's not just breaking her records, she's obliterating records. These might sound like marginal shades of seconds, but they are quite significant to these distances. She said in March she's still unsure what her limits are in 400 metre racing. But if you compare what she's done, it just is quite incredible. And you're starting to get a little bit excited about Olympic Games and her age profile as well. And I know Michael Johnson was tweeting about her quite recently, we mentioned on the show, and giving her little tips in terms of keeping her arms straight and using her arms more while running.
That was really interesting.
Yeah,
that feedback. If she starts using her arms properly, she's going to be even better again. And it seems like every single weekend, like you said, Shane, like she's somehow not making these Let Labs performance rankings, and she's just creating record after record. And we were in our own chat this weekend, and our own Dara put it into the chat like, we have to put Adeleke in now, because it was another record. And when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, here we go again. I thought it was an old article. That's how frequently she's breaking her own records.
That 400 metre time, by the way, had she been in Tokyo in the Olympics, she would have been 6th with that time and 4th place in last year's Worlds. Now clearly runners are getting faster, but it kind of just highlights where she is. So she would have been in an Olympic final 400 metres, and she's only taken up the distance. So that just sums up how fast she is.
Really weird decision not to bring her to the last major championships. Remember the time and they were like, oh no, I remember that, like what was going on? Somebody needs to be that decision needs to be revisited. But also shows the benefit maybe of the US collegiate system, which kind of had maybe fallen off as a life ambition for a lot of Irish athletes, saying, oh, you can stay at home and you can really be world class, but whatever the quality of coaching she's getting is obviously helping.
Those facilities, I've been to those athletic facilities in the University of Texas in Austin, and I once did a couple of laps around it. I was staying in Austin by myself doing a documentary on space. I said, I'm going to go at night time and do a few laps. What I didn't realise, I was just thinking, there's going to be a load of like general joggers out. What I didn't realise was there were actual national and international athletes sprinting past me on this unbelievable spongy track. And I was like, what am I doing here? They must have looked at this pasty Irish guy going, nah, this is ridiculous. So she has facilities there. She's got talent. She's got people behind her. She's only 20 years of age. And if she keeps smashing records like this, I don't think we can possibly yet fathom what her ceiling is.
Well, yeah, objectively, we're looking at another world-class Irish athlete. It's a lot to get excited by.
Hype train like Evan Ferguson, we're going to...
Absolutely.
Choo-choo.
Choo-choo it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's choo-choo onto the other green, because the small matter of Monaghan and Tyrone in Oma yesterday at Healy Park. I was there myself in the main stand. Quite excited, let me tell you.
Sorry, can I ask you, because I need to set this up for you.
Yeah.
When Ryan O'Toole picks the ball up, 101, Niall Morgan from a tight angle, what's your first thought?
My immediate first thought was, this is very similar to the position in which he got the ball against Mayo and buried the ball, but this is a totally different scenario. All I'm thinking was, and I was screaming it internally, fist the ball over the bar. We've had a good second half. We'll take them to extra time and we'll beat them in extra time. Please, Ryan, fist the ball over the bar. And then he kicks it through the legs of Niall Morgan, and I lost my mind.
And he said that afterwards too, that the first thing in his mind was to fist the ball over the bar, and he thought, all right, I'm 1-on-1 with Morgan, why not?
You know what I would say about this? So you lads know I'm an fairly optimistic person. I generally tend to be optimistic naturally. I don't have to force it. Monaghan people generally are optimistic. I think as a folk, it's because we're at the border there. We're quite entrepreneurial. We're quite ingenious when it comes to little ways of making a few extra quid, possibly.
We're quite ingenious.
Yeah, 100%. But Monaghan people are eternal optimists. But look at the way Monaghan, five years out of the last 9, staying up on the final day of the league. It's all over yesterday when McCurry puts that last point over and gives Tyrone the 1 point advantage. There are 30 seconds left on the clock. And then the goal wins the game. They don't even bother with the extra time. There's a quote in Breaking Bad, lads, where Walter White is talking about his cancer and going to get his treatment, and he's driving to the hospital with his family, and he just wanted every traffic light to turn red, but he kept hitting the green lights, and he was like, for once in my life, would the traffic lights just not go red? Yesterday I was driving home in traffic with all the other Monaghan fans through the Ballygawley roundabout, through Auchnacloy, through Garvahi, and I was absolutely loving the traffic. All the Monaghan fans were just coasting through life in the lovely evening sun, heading home to Monaghan, through Tyrone, all the little villages and towns of Tyrone, and the traffic just didn't bother me. So,
are you beeping the horn as you go?
A little bit. The little finger up, yeah, 100%. It was
Which
just
finger up? Sorry, which finger up?
just the little wag, the country wag. When you have the hand on the wheel, you do that. How are you, lad? Tyrone 118, Monaghan 217. What an advertisement for Ulster football. Who said Ulster football is crap and dour?
5 points down at half time as well.
It was impressive.
You might want to do a shout out for Conor McManus, will you?
Oh,
Here we go.
I mean, that free kick at the end to give Monaghan the advantage once more was remarkable. He sends Beggan back where he came from. Beggan had missed a couple of kicks. I thought Beggan's distribution second half from kickouts was brilliant, all bar 1 or 2 kicks maybe. But McManus just to have the cojones to take that out of the hands and knock it over. Even Kilpatrick, the Tyrone midfielder, who was kind of saying things in his ear as he was about to kick it, McManus literally just goes over to him and says something back to him after he's kicked it over the bar, and Kilpatrick, all he can do is smirk. Carl O'Connell's running game was outrageously good. Stevie O'Hanlon, I mentioned him last week as a person who has come back into the Monaghan squad. I think I was asked what Monaghan's chances were against Tyrone, and I pinpointed Stevie O'Hanlon as someone, Micheál Bannigan as well, who scored a brilliant point in the second half. Conor McCarthy was largely quiet for portions of the game, especially in the first half, and he pops up with 2 brilliant scores in the second half. McManus described Rory Beggan as the quarterback at the end of the match, and you see him bombing forward with the ball in hand, reaching the Monaghan 45-metre line, and that pass into Carl Gallagher diagonally for the first Monaghan goal. Gallagher lays it off to Stevie O'Hanlon, and O'Hanlon does what he does. He looks one way, shimmies, beats Conor Myler, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it was every aspect of that was absolutely class, because it was not an easy thing. Does what he does, against Tyrone.
Yeah, with everything on the line, Monaghan were 2 points down at that point. So to score the goal, all of a sudden Monaghan are thinking, well, we have an advantage now. Let's change the approach to the game. And they did have a change of approach. They said, let's play on our own terms in the second half. Let's play in the front foot.
I do think that we probably, because we're living through the Conor McManus era, and there's been other great forwards of his generation, but he's entering a new pantheon of conversations. Just to be able to do this at this stage of his career is remarkable.
Yeah.
At this stage of their careers, everybody else was slowing down, and becoming bit part players or changing their roles, going out to play centre forward and be the quarterback of the team instead of no, I'm going to kick the 9 points against Tyrone.
Yeah, 9 from 9 at 35 years of age.
It's ridiculous.
When I mentioned his name, I was just thinking Monaghan's Mount Rushmore and how solidified he is as possibly the top spot. Tony Corey said afterwards, he's Monaghan's greatest ever player.
It wasn't even and you'd be like, of course he is. Now you're kind of starting to have conversation. Actually, you know what? To do what he did for Monaghan all those years, where does he begin to rank in all time great forwards?
He's in conversations. He has to be.
And we can get back to it for sure.
The point was made. That's his 60th championship start in a row. That's outrageous. Since he made his debut in 2007, it's been well publicised that he never played county minor, didn't make minor, was a skinny wing half back before they decided, this lad can actually shoot. Let's put him up in the full forward line and the half forward line at first, but it just worked. He's outrageously good, and that second half performance, the Monaghan Derry semi-final in Ulster is going to be a cracker. It's going to be a totally different game, but looking forward to it.
Very good.
Derry are delighted by this, by the way. They're like, yeah, you guys, off you go. You enjoy that crack now. We were amazing, by the way. We fixed all the problems that we had the previous time. The last time you saw us against Dublin, for example, we now have forwards and a style of playing in the forward. So We shall see.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. 3:17, I think Derry put up. So yeah, Monaghan in the red. Sorry, not in the red. Monaghan will never be in the red this year, lads. It's going to be a long summer. Monaghan in the green. That's the performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
Ger, everyone didn't think Spurs were going to go on and win the league. Nowhere near the quality or age profile of this Arsenal squad, says Dennis Ryan. There was definitely a sense that this is a season of building for Pochettino and for Spurs, and everything's going to be okay, and, you know, we're coming force and blah, blah, blah. So it didn't happen. A reminder, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee coming to an Applegreen store near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month, so visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn Coffee experience. After the break, Alison Miller on Ireland's defeat against Italy. First, some Brian Kerrigoodness talking about Arsenal's collapse against West Ham.
Southampton now is a must-win game.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the way Antonio bullies those centre-backs.
Southampton don't have that quality.
But Erling Haaland does. You're thinking of the Man City game, thinking ahead.
Yeah.
I'd say Guardiola's looking at that game today, licking his lips.
Well, maybe, but you know, he'll see the danger that Arsenal. He won't be judging Arsenal just on today's performance. He'll be looking at some of the stuff that Arsenal played in the first half hour today, and particularly in the first half last week, and even late in the game last week against Liverpool. They were trying to chase to win the game late on, even though Ramsdale ends up making a great save at the death. So you know, both managers, they know each other very well. They know how each other teams will play. They both play in basically the same way, and I don't think he'd be over troubled about the Haaland thing. I think it'll be about, can he get his own team playing at the levels they've been playing at consistently, creating chances, defending well, getting a fair bit of possession in the middle of the field, not being pushed back on the back foot by Manchester City as they normally do. Most teams end up on the back foot against them, unless they feel confident enough to take them on. And really only Arsenal and Liverpool, I suppose, in the last couple of seasons have been able to take Manchester City on. Anyone else has got results against them. It's usually been playing on the counter-attack a little bit. Maybe Newcastle this year become a bit more confident, but I don't think Arsenal will want to play on the counter-attack. They'll want to have possession. It's going to be a great game when it comes, particularly if both teams win next weekend.
OTB AM,
the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The Football Pod are hitting the road again, and we're delighted to announce that we're heading to Killarney for our first big show of the summer. All with thanks to AIB.
It was quality. It was a good one.
Join us for a brilliant night of football, chat and crack, with plenty of focus on the All-Ireland champions Kerry and the contenders who are coming for their throw.
Does it keep you up at night with not winning Sam Maguire?
No.
This is an exclusive off-air event, and tickets are limited, so don't delay.
We have a great show ahead. We are going to get our special guest out tonight.
Tickets are €20, including booking fee. Go to offtheball.com/event now. The Football Pod, in partnership with AIB. Check out #TheToughest for more. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Italy beat Ireland by 24 points to 7 in the Six Nations at the weekend. Alison Miller is with us now to talk about the game and just the general context of everything that's going on at the moment. Alison, I think there was probably some hope that the team would put in a performance somewhat inspired, somewhat in answer to the Telegraph article and the controversy that surrounded it. But really, they're just not in a position to do any better than they did against Italy, are they?
No, but at the same time, it was the first game this year where I felt they were in it, that they could have actually, they were competitive, and that, like, at times I felt, oh God, they could score here and there, they could come back into and they could potentially win. Not felt that in any other game this year. And yeah, we're just going to have to be realistic about where this team are at now and be patient. And that's not saying it's giving excuses for poor performance. It's been realistic. I think the girls, the players would say that themselves, that they're not where they want to be yet. So yeah, it was a tough week for the team, I'm sure. A lot of negativity surrounding the women's game for quite a while now. So I'm not sure. A young team might have affected them. Maybe it didn't. Some of them, who knows? We don't know. So, but at the same time, they were very disappointed to lose to Italy. But there was improvement. And look, people are going to say, oh, you can't keep saying there's improvement. That's true. Like, they're not winning games, end of. But the only way to measure success for this team at the moment when they're losing games is by the individual parts of the game of the process, because they're not winning games. So we can't say, oh, you can't, they've lost 3 out of 3. It is what it is. So unfortunately, we just got to measure the game for what we see in the individual components.
And in those individual components, are you seeing enough to suggest that the team is, one, has talent and potential, and then is also being well coached?
It's interesting because there's a lot of talk about, now I'll get to that question in a minute, but there's a lot of talk about the team being young. But an interesting stat is Italy and Ireland had an average age of 26 years of age when you added up all their ages on both teams. So it's probably more about an experience than age if their average ages of both teams is 26. It's nearly like they're improving each week, but it's like too late. Like, it's, there's parts coming together that you would have hoped maybe that was happening 9-10 weeks ago. So they seem to be chasing their improvement is too far behind where we wanted it. Like, we would have wanted the rate of improvement or be doing that in their camps, but unfortunately the Celtic Cup, which was on, probably wasn't a help to this Irish team, which we would have thought it was at the time because the standard was quite poor. So it probably didn't benefit this Irish team as much as we would have hoped. So I think, Greg McWilliams coached me. He is a very good coach in that he's very creative, but I think they're probably at a position now where they obviously don't have the sevens girls. And I think at the weekend, what we were lacking, especially in the back line, was someone to finish. A back that can beat someone one-on-one and finish. So there's no doubt, and that's no disrespect to the players that are there, but if you had a Bevan Parsons on an end on a particular move, she's a person that can make things happen and beat people one-on-one. And that's what I felt we were lacking. Those players are on their own journey to try and qualify for the Olympics, and that's be a massive thing. I suppose we're hoping to see more players come through, in the future, that we have, that it's not as massive issue when we have girls gone to the sevens.
Can I ask you about the Olympics, right? Because I am a different age from people who've kind of got into sevens rugby. I certainly was never part of, when I was a kid growing up, there was the Six Nations and there were World Cups, and that's kind of what our rugby culture was based on. And I understand that there is a new generation who are mad into the sevens and follow the fortunes of the team, and they're on YouTube and it is a different. They're trying to do something different to it. I don't really, even if Ireland go to the Olympics and do well in the Olympics, I'll feel the same I would about the golfers winning a medal in the Olympics. Fair play, happy for you, but it doesn't really matter because it's not the athletics in the Olympics, or it's not like the boxers in the Olympics, which is the peak of their sport. For me, the peak of rugby is the Six Nations and the World Cup. And we had a team that was competitive in the Six Nations and the World Cup, and we decided to go over here and chase this shiny thing. And I don't know. Did you grow up dreaming of being a sevens Olympic champion?
I didn't dream up of being any rugby player because, I got to rugby late like every one of us at the time. But maybe I'm in a different position. I grew up doing athletics and Gaelic football, very different sports, but Olympics would have been a big thing in athletics. So for me, when I was playing rugby, sevens was all about Olympics. I would have liked to have got to the Olympics. Liked playing on the World Series, but for me, sevens was all about Olympics. And if I could have gone to one Olympics, fantastic. But rugby, yes, to everyone out there, to majority of people out there, it's about World Cups and Six Nations. And my husband played rugby all his life and, play AIL and all that. And he'd have no interest in watching sevens. And it's funny because when I was playing sevens, back when I was, and I might be playing a Six Nations, the general people like me out where I'm from, Lee, should be like, why are you not playing the Six Nations? Where are you? Like, they wouldn't know that you're playing sevens. So yeah, I think there is, like, for example, my brother would be not a massive rugby fan, he's a soccer and GA, and he came to watch me in Hong Kong at the time years ago, and he much preferred to watch sevens because for him he just preferred watching it. There wasn't maybe the intricacies of the scrum and line out and different things. He just so I don't know, maybe there's a different audience. It'd be a massive thing for the girls to qualify 100%, but yeah, like if we're being honest, I think where most of the interest from maybe the common public and maybe the rugby community would be 15s. But I think if you're an athletic girl and you're going between 7s and 15s, you probably like to achieve in both if you can. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, like I think that's where the tradition lies in our country with 15s.
Well, as Ger said this morning, Alison, that decision not to pick the sevens players is a decision. And
I look, to be honest, I think, when they're chasing Olympic qualification, I think it's the right decision, because 2016 the team didn't qualify, which I was part of. 2020 didn't qualify, and now they're in a really good position to qualify. And they have been mixing with the best teams on the circuit. And look, very different games. And I would say a few of the girls can come in and be very good at 15s. And I think there's kind of a hybrid player that can do both. And I have seen unbelievable backs in 15s that don't take to the sevens game. I have seen unbelievable sevens players on the circuit, on the World Series, that don't take to the 15s game. So it's not saying that, but there's no doubt that a game breaker like Bevan Parsons yesterday, and she is like, she can beat people, but she's quite physical as well. And I kind of felt in the backs, with probably the exception of Aoife Dalton, I thought she had a really good game. Probably lacking a little bit of physicality in her backs as well. So, like, what I thought was improved was their defence in terms of their shape and their structure and their ability to get off the line. Probably what let them down was just the ability to finish the tackle. Sometimes they were wrapping and then the people were breaking the tackle. So like shape, structure, line speed, intent was much better, but then the ability just to finish off the tackle and squeeze and get them to the ground and finish off the tackle was lacking. So they're, improvement, but not finishing it off. We also saw like our ruck height on Saturday was very high, and that's something that is just the basics, and that should be better if the guards are going to be honest with themselves and the coaching, because there was times we made line breaks and then we had, we'd make a really good line break and then we'd have very slow ruck ball because we couldn't clean out our rucks effectively with height, with good ruck height. We were getting into a shoulder battle, which we didn't need to, and then we couldn't then play off that quick ruck ball because our rucks were ineffective. So that was an issue in that game. And I think we're not being clinical 10 metres out. When we get an opportunity, we're just not able to take it. So another interesting stat is like 74% of Italy's players used in this year's Six Nations played in the 2022 Six Nations, were only 59% of Ireland's played in last year's Six Nations. So, and like the average caps per back for Ireland was 10, Italy was 44. That's starting backs. And the average caps for the starting forwards in Ireland was 16, Italy was 35. So you're seeing kind of a disparity in like experience, which it's like anything. I think if you're trying to, like I remember coaching girls rugby years ago, and when you have everyone coming from the same place, it's harder, if inexperienced, but if you've got more experience out there, everyone is able to kind of feed off that. So they're kind of at that position where the inexperience is all around. Now there is experienced girls in terms of an Irish perspective. And look, until we get more games in the summer and more autumn internationals, we can't compare caps to England. I played for 10 years and played in nearly every Six Nations games, and I only have nearly 50 caps. So, and that was me playing all the time. So we can't compare against England, who went off in summer tours and autumn internationals, because that's realistically, we haven't done that as a country yet. And I hope that we do that.
That's on the RFU though, not organising those games, not investing in the game. Like and the point about the caps is interesting, but it's a choice as well in that we're not picking the experienced players. We've decided to anybody who was part of the old stuff, you can head off there now. And it does feel like a lot of the stuff that was written about in the article is kind of like a factor of decisions that have been made, and a lot of the people who made those decisions are still involved with the IRFU, and you're kind of thinking, I'm just not sure the direction we're going in.
Like, I think the thing is, like, what is that quote? Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I think there is fantastic work being done in the RFU. There is fantastic people working there in the women's game. But I think the big thing is, I know they said, look, you have to forget about, these are all irrelevant because it's in the past. But like any organisation, whether they're successful or not, like, you constantly kind of have to ask yourself, what are we doing right? What can we do better? And that's any company, any organisation. You constantly have to just look back and go, what are we learning from? Like, we didn't do that very well in the past. How can we do better? And that's just kind of maybe, and I don't think that's what any organisation should do all the time. So I think maybe there's a little bit of looking at things that happened and seeing, well, we don't really want to let that happen again. So how can we move on? Yes, we're doing really good things, but like, how can we do things better? Because we're constantly striving to be better. And I presume the RFU want to be that organisation that, can adapt and evolve and do things better and not be afraid to, ask themselves, could we do things better? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with putting your hands up sometimes and saying, okay, we could have done that better.
I hope.
Like, that's a progressive organisation if they do that.
Yeah, but I'm not. I don't see the evidence of that in what they're doing at the moment, and that's the problem. I think that I haven't seen enough from the IRFU. They put Greg McWilliams out to answer this and say it was historic. They didn't put David Nucifora out. They didn't put the chief executive out and say, okay, we thought we'd reached a point where this wasn't going to be an issue anymore. We hoped that this was historic. It clearly isn't, but we're on top of this. Don't worry. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's the right response, isn't it? That's a sensible approach. Like, if anyone does that wrong, anyone in our jobs would go, oh, I'm sorry about that. I thought we'll really look to really try and improve that. Instead of sometimes it comes across defensive, I suppose the only thing I have to say is sometimes all these stories, they take away from what we need to fix and getting better at rugby. But at the same time, we can't ignore the past because that is an indication of how our future goes. Like, I'm a history teacher, so we have, like, people will always look at history so we don't repeat the same thing over and over again. So yeah, like, hands up and go, like, there was a story about the protein. All I think you had to say was, God, we hope that never happens again. We'll do everything in our power to ensure that every player, whatever, simple. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm no PR person, but would that not be, instead of saying we don't know who this scenario is? Look, but that's neither here nor there, because I think at the same time, as a player, you just kind of have to make things, unfortunately, you just have to kind of roll with things at the same time, but not. It's a fine balance, isn't it? Kind of not to make excuses for yourself, but to kind of demand change, but to not let it drag you down. Yeah.
And look, all sports in Ireland in our history have gone through this at every level. Yeah. You think of Roy Keane complaining about facilities. You think of Keith Wood's generation and Brian O'Driscoll's generation setting the standard for what was expected and acceptable in the men's national team and the approach. And these teething difficulties could lead somewhere good, but I just want to see some more evidence from the IRFU that they're listening to it. And
I think, like, players' voice is really important. And I think, I think a lot of the issues just could be avoided with just a little bit more player input. And that's actually listening to the players. And it's not, it's just, that's a simple thing to do, because they're the people that you need. You need your players. And I think the women's game is really growing in this country. And I think you have to remember that, where if you have a club and you're getting more girls into it, you get more memberships, they're bringing along their brothers that might not Like I was involved in Port Rugby Club, and I was involved with underage girls maybe, it was 12 years ago now. But traditionally and you kind of see that in rugby, you'll get maybe girls coming from non-traditional backgrounds, maybe more so than boys, and then they bring along their brothers that might traditionally never have. So massive opportunity to, really drive this women's game and see it as positive thing. Like,
Exactly.
Like, why not? Like, I mean,
we've got to leave it there.
Positivity, say, like in GA and women's, and how they really help communities and clubs. So let's just try and see it in the positive. But I think realistically, Ireland are going to have a difficult encounter now against England, and it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, Alison, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No bother, guys. Bye bye.
It's Alison Miller giving us some thoughts on the weekend's rugby, and it's going to be difficult against England. We're going to get hockeyed, and it's just a matter of damage limitation. 8:30 this morning here, OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave of your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. We have a live UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat. It's coming your way on the 3rd of May in the Mansion House in Dublin. UEFA Champions League winners John O'Shea and Wes Brown, along with Arsenal legend Paul Merson, are going to be there on the night. It's sure to be a brilliant night's entertainment. It's an exclusive off-air event, and tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to offtheball.com/events. We'll see you on the night. Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League.
My favourite comment in, Ger, has come from Colin McCarthy, talking about Rashida Adeleke running those kind of times at the Tom Jones Invitational. It's not unusual. Hey, I see what they did there. Fantastic. Keep those kind of comments coming in. Puns are always welcome. We don't get many of them, but they lighten up my Monday morning. Keep them lit.
Dahlia Shocknessig says, Colin Buig, if Arsenal don't win the title, it's a terrible season for them. Your Manchester United FC bitterness shining through. Cry laughing emoji, and then the other one is just like a laughing emoji. I don't know. I think that you're always going to regret not winning it this year. Right, at 8:31 though, we're saying good morning to Daniel Harris. Daniel, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Big win for Manchester United in the race for top 4. It feels safe now on the back of that result. However, the injuries are beginning to stack up for them, so it's not plain sailing.
No, I think it felt like when they've always, various points of the season, there have been games where you think if United win this one, it'll be really, really hard for them to make a mess of top 4. And they kept not winning that key game that would have given them an extra game's difference away from the teams with whom they're competing. But the results of the weekend, I mean, Tottenham losing at home to Bournemouth doesn't suggest they're about to put the kind of run together that will see them retrieve the deficit on United. And similarly, Newcastle they played really well against United, but they haven't been playing that well generally. And they seem to have been kind of scraping by quite a lot in games. So with Tottenham playing Newcastle next weekend, although United are taken up with the cup, it does seem like top 4 is pretty much sorted. It would take a significant collapse. And you're right about the injuries, but they do still have enough quality and enough firepower, as we saw yesterday, I think.
Daniel, talk to me about Anthony Dos Santos, not Anthony Martial, but Anthony rubs people up the wrong way. He fills a lot of column inches and airtime for ourselves as well. Maybe because his stats haven't been as good as United fans would have expected when he joined. And yesterday's goal ended a run of 6 games without a goal for him. But all of a sudden his performances are kind of showing us why United paid so much money for him.
I think we spoke about this when I was on the week before last. I think that the thing about Anthony is that he was bought because they think he's going to be a brilliant player. He's already quite good, but I think it's more about the player that you can see he's going to become. I've got this piece about Anthony that I started writing probably 3 weeks ago, and I just haven't had time to finish it, explaining why I think he's good. And it feels like actually, in a sense, the way that he's performing on the pitch has almost overtaken me, where if you've been watching Anthony these last few weeks and you still don't think he's any good, then I'm not certain what you're watching, and you're probably never going to think he's any good. But what we're seeing from him is we're seeing great desire to run in behind, and a greater desire to sometimes go on the outside. Of course, he's got that thing that he can do where he comes on the inside. And when you're so good at doing that, obviously you want to keep doing it because his ability to shoot from that kind of angle is brilliant. But what you have to do is the defender has to fear that you might be able to do something slightly different. And at the beginning of the season, when it was put to Ten Hag that he doesn't like to run in behind, Ten Hag said he can do it. He's got the speed to do it. And we saw that quite a lot against Everton last weekend. But in any event, what you see with Anthony is he gives the team balance. So, and I think Ten Hag said this as well, that he's playing in a winning team. So that tells you that he's contributing something. And what he has is he has the bravery to always take the ball, and he doesn't care if he's going to get kicked, and he's got attitude as well. And that gives the defenders a break. Even if he doesn't necessarily create anything, he has an ability to hold the ball, to keep possession, to win free kicks. And I think one of the things about Anthony is we shouldn't just look at the way that he performs in this particular iteration of United's team, but think about how Ten Hag is going to want the team to play next season and the season after. And Anthony's style fits in really well with that as they move from becoming a team that's really good in transition, as they were under Ole, really good on the counter, to being a team that's looking to dominate games, as we saw yesterday, as we saw against Everton, as we saw for some of the game against Sevilla, where he also played quite well.
What's the formation and where does he play in that? So when they're controlling games, how does the team line up, say, next season or the season after? Let's ignore the personnel for the minute, but what's his preferred formation, do you think? And where does Anthony fit into that?
Well, I think he's sort of moved. He started off playing, I think, the formation he wanted to play at the beginning of the season, which was in midfield with a 6 and 2 8s. And it sort of didn't work quite that well. The defence wasn't settled enough. The team didn't quite understand what he wanted them to do. They didn't have a lot of confidence either. So in the end, it then sort of changed from a 6 and 2 8s to 2 6s and a 10. And that is already more of a transition-based team because you're trying to be solid and then spring. But what they are now is they're more back to a 6 and 2 8s, Casemiro and then Bruno and Christian Eriksen. Bruno's playing a bit deeper and they're looking to control possession. And one of the ways you control possession is you invert at least one of your fullbacks, and we saw that yesterday. And you also have a winger that can come inside and you're almost creating that box midfield or just creating overloads in the middle of the pitch that then enables you to isolate your opponent's defenders on the in wide areas as they have to kind of funnel players inside as well, stop you walking through them in that area. So the advantage of Anthony is that he's a left footer playing on the right wing. There generally aren't that many of those around, but it means that he's able to come in field, get involved in the play. And as Aaron Wan-Bissaka is growing in confidence, he's actually able to help him, whether with overlaps or with underlaps. And that's given United numerical superiority out wide and in midfield. And I think that the reason they pushed the boat out to sign Anthony was, one, you've got to assume that Ten Hag was certain, because he knew that you go and spend 90 million quid on this player and he turns out to be rubbish. You know that the only reason you're signing him is because Ten Hag wants him so much. And so if Ten Hag is saying, I'm prepared to stake 90 million quid of my spends, and also a certain element of his reputation, because Anthony has played for him before, so he knows exactly who that player is. I kind of always felt confident that Ten Hag knows A, more about football than I do, and B, more about Anthony than I do. And I guess I didn't think that when David Moyes signed Marouane Fellaini, so it's not a foolproof system of deciding who's good and who isn't. But I think that Ten Hag knew how he wanted to play, and it feels like he thought that Anthony was crucial to the way he wanted to play, and watching how United play, I can see that. And to bring it back to stats, which is what Colin said at the beginning, of course you want more goals and more assists, but the team is winning, and you can see the development in Anthony's game as he's growing as a player, getting used to the league, settling in England, and getting more comfortable. So I think next season we'll see him improve again.
Has the performance, Daniel, of the defence yesterday, the makeshift defence, albeit, allayed any concerns over the absence of the likes of Alessandro Martinez and even Varane for a lesser extent? Because Maguire and Lindelof, when you look at that team, you're thinking this is a Solskjaer or Rangnick back four. But yesterday's performance would perhaps give United fans a little bit of comfort.
Not for me personally. I can't speak for anyone else. The way I see it is that Lindelof and Maguire are good players. They're good Premier League defenders. They are good enough to play for a team that gets into the top four. We know that because we've seen it. My concern with those two isn't their ability to play well enough at Forest away. Maguire started dodgily, but he played well after that. It's not their ability to make sure that you beat Forest. It's, I think, looking at this season and what's left, it feels like at some point, if United are reliant on those two in the Cups, then they'll let them down at some point. We've seen it. We saw it against Sevilla when they lost to Sevilla in the Europa League the last time in the pandemic season. And we saw it against Villarreal as well in the final that they lost. I mean, Maguire was injured and they missed him in that game. But I seem to recall that Villarreal's goal had quite a lot to do with Lindelof. And if you look at the games that are left, those two might be good enough for United to go and get a result in Sevilla. against Sevilla on Thursday. Maguire's suspended for Brighton anyway, but I think from that game it will only be one of the max anyway, because as soon as Luke Shaw's back, I'd expect to see him play at left centre back, and it'll be one of the other two, because Ten Hag's been quite clear about that he sees Maguire as a right-sided centre back. Lindelof is that as well, really, and Ten Hag likes to have a balance with the centre backs, the left footer and the right footer, which is one of the reasons Shaw ended up there in the first place. So I think that those two, if United have to rely on one of those two against City in an FA Cup final, potentially, or maybe in the Europa League going forward as well, then that might be a problem. But in terms of finishing in the top four, we've seen that those two are good enough to do that, and that was when they didn't have Casemiro playing in front of them.
So next season, or maybe at the end of this season, when Rashford is back fit, assuming he gets back before the end of the season, what would the ideal scenario be? Probably a better question is next season. It's going to be Rashford on one side, Anthony on the other, and then a central striker. So the central striker is really the priority this summer?
Probably. I think it depends a little bit. And one of the problems that United have is that as a final two fingers, the Glazers are hampering the summer plans by trying to scrounge a few more quid out of potential bidders. And we still don't know if they're really going to sell at all. So Ten Hag won't know exactly what money's available. I think that if Qatar take over, then presumably United can go and buy pretty much whoever they want in terms of money. So buying an expensive centre forward wouldn't affect the quality of the midfield player that they can buy. If it's someone different, or if it's still the Glazers, then you might have a slightly different equation. It looks unlikely that Jude Bellingham's going to come to United, but if United were able to get him, he'd obviously cost a load of money. You might then compromise on the centre forward slightly, because someone like Jude Bellingham, I mean, he's Brian Robson. You see, you spend all the money that it takes to get him, if you possibly can, I think. Otherwise, what we've seen in the last couple of games, and Ten Hag keeps hammering this point, he was hammering it at the beginning of the season, Anthony Martial is basically almost the ideal Ten Hag centre-forward, because the kind of player that he wants, he doesn't want a scavenger or a goal scorer. I mean, I'm sure he'd like Erling Haaland if you could get him, because he's so good that, again, if you can get him, you just do. But Ten Hag's ideal centre-forward doesn't really look exactly like Erling Haaland. It looks more like Anthony Martial in terms of style. Someone who can come short, hold the ball, retain possession, who also has the speed to run in behind, bring others into play, good finisher, can run with the ball. And Ten Hag keeps hammering this point. You can see he really likes Martial as a player. And just in the last couple of games, we've seen exactly why that is, because when you have that player, it just brings so much more out of the players to either side. You get much more out of the wingers. And also, if we've been watching the games, you can see that Bruno trusts him. The balls that Bruno's passing into Martial and then setting off, knowing that he might get some decent possession back, or that it might go somewhere when it then allows him to make a third-man run, is making a massive difference to the team. So it sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, obviously, because I feel like I've been saying it for so many years, but a fit and focused Anthony Martial is a really, really good player. The problem this season has actually been the fitness more than the focus. I mean, yesterday I couldn't believe what I was seeing, that United's first goal came from Anthony Martial scavenging possession high up the pitch, and that version of Martial is a really good player. So if United were able to rely on him next season, then they wouldn't necessarily need to spend the majority of their budget on a striker, but I'm sure that Ten Hag, ideal world, won't rely on that, and he will go and buy a centre forward, which again, I mean, the most similar centre forward who's on the market is either Harry Kane, but he lacks that little bit of gas, and United probably don't want to deal with Tottenham, and he costs a load of money. Or Ferguson from Brighton, who I'm sure you guys have a massive interest in, who also looks like one of those all-round centre forwards who doesn't have a weakness. The question is whether they would want to go and spend the kind of money that it would take to buy him when he might not be ready to compete at the level that United want, or sometimes you go and buy these young players and you think that they're not ready, but they're young and they're brilliant and they just are exactly ready to go and get involved.
We understand he's a Manchester United fan as well, Daniel, so that could help.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I'm sure that Brighton will be getting offers for him this summer. I think that if they're not offers from clubs of United stature, then chances are they would want him to stay, and he might want to stay because he knows that he doesn't need to take a step before going to an elite level club. He's good enough to go to an elite level club when he's ready. I think what you usually find with players is that as soon as those offers are available for them, they want to take them, because in football, you don't know what's going to happen. You might get injured, you might lose form, and those moves might not be available to you again. And sometimes they go wrong, like, say, Graham Potter going to Chelsea, which didn't necessarily feel like the right fit, but you can see why he took it, because who knows when that offer's going to come again. Or when Rooney went to Man United, when he'd done a little bit more than Ferguson had at that age, obviously, but he just took that offer. I remember reading an article from, I think it was David Pleat, who's forgotten more about football than I will ever know, who was saying that Gareth Bale should have stayed at Tottenham another year because he wasn't quite ready for that level. And Gareth Bale then goes and wins the European Cup. And with elite level talents, usually you find that when you chuck them into a pool of brilliant players, they manage to swim, they manage to find their way. So the other kind of signing is Victor Osimhen. And I think if I was Ten Hag, I would be more thinking along the lines of United can afford to leave Harry Kane at Tottenham. If Harry Kane stays at Tottenham are not going to be competing with United for league titles and Champions Leagues, which is where United want to be. He's been there all this time. Tottenham haven't won the league. They haven't won the Champions League. They haven't got that close to winning the league. Obviously got to a Champions League final, but they've almost got close to winning the league a couple of times. So Harry Kane, as far as United are concerned, is kind of safe at Tottenham.
Can I just ask you, Daniel? Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, if Victor Osimhen goes to another Premier League club, that is not something that you would particularly want, I don't think.
You mentioned Bruno Fernandes there a moment ago, Daniel. We had Kenny Cunningham on commentary for us on this match yesterday, and he was full of praise for Bruno Fernandes after the match. Said it's as good as he's seen him playing in quite some time. Back to his best in many ways. Like he's playing with a little bit of consistency now, I guess, is Bruno Fernandes.
He's always been consistent. Bruno Fernandes is the only player, apart from Lionel Messi, since he signed for United, who's got 50 goals and 50 assists. The only player in world football who's done that in that time. He won Man of the Match yesterday. I think he's won 33 Player of the Match awards since he joined United. That's one every 3 games. If that's not consistency, I don't know what is. I agree that he's gone up a level this season, but I think that's as much to do with the team as it is to do with him. That when he played in Ole's team, who are primarily a counter-attacking team, it was basically on him to make goals happen. But I always thought that he had the football brain to play a bit deeper because he's got the long passing and he's just got the football intelligence. He sees things faster than other people, and he has the ability to change what he's going to do in a split second as the ball's on his way to him. And what we're seeing now is he's just playing in a better team with better players, and so he's playing better. The thing with him is also that he's always fit. I think he's missed one game in his entire career with injury or one game with illness. That's it. And someone you can rely on to always be available and to still pulling it in. Like yesterday, he covered more distance than anyone else on the pitch. And I don't think I agree with Kenny in that he wasn't just good yesterday. He was good in midweek. He was good last week. He's been good almost all season. And as his role has changed, he played as a number 6 against Everton, and he bossed the game from there. And I heard him give an interview on United's official club podcast, which is really good, where he says that he thinks when he gets a bit older, that's the position that he can play. And watching him play, you can see that he should be capable of doing that. And he's not someone I would ever criticise for inconsistency. I might criticise him for he could still have done a little bit more in the very biggest games. But when someone's consistently being good in almost all the other games, you would allow them that one.
We've got to wrap it there. Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
See you again. Bye, everyone. Ta-ra.
Daniel Harris this morning at 8:48. Colin Mullaney's with us. Colin, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, lads. How's it going?
What's going on?
Well, I would have hand-passed that ball yesterday, I think, across the square. I wouldn't have gone for goal.
It was like the last option, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like fist it over is easiest. Pass it across is probably second easiest, and then hitting it for goal is the one fraught with danger.
It's funny, though. Like, I heard someone saying it wasn't even that good a shot, but it was. And there's been a load of those goals going in the championship, in hurling and in football this year. Goalkeepers are getting beaten at the near post because they're taking a step. Like you see behind the goals, Morgan touches the post and then goes out to get it. Or is that the first goal? Am I mixing up? Have I seen behind the goal? I think I have. And am I mixing that up?
First goal was where
behind
he
the
cut
goals,
in from the end line.
Goes near post. Stand.
Sorry, it was the behind the goal from the first one. So I don't know. Maybe Morgan takes a step and they've done their homework. But the fact that he'd done the same goal like 3 weeks ago,
against Mayo,
that's suggests there's a culture of let's go for goals.
Very
and
impressive.
Even the conversation they were saying afterwards about how it was just intensity, proper pressure on the kickouts, go for goals in the second half.
Yeah.
I was watching the BBC coverage, and it was really interesting. Mickey Hart was beaming at half time. He was absolutely thrilled. And Michael Murphy was saying, this is the Canavan performance that we've been waiting for, his kind of breakout where
1-5.
Literally every shot was successful in that first half. But Michael Murphy was like, I think Monaghan are going to be pretty happy here. I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I thought they were absolutely dominated. And Oisin McConville was, I think they'll be happy enough now. They'll turn around and they're going to have a big breeze. And Mickey Hart was like, lads, what are you talking about? This game's over. I was 100% in the Mickey Hart camp at halftime, thinking this has been like, they're like a big brother holding their scrappy little brother off. And I don't know.
It was a matter of keeping with them. And then I knew the first 5-10 minutes of the second half were going to be crucial. And Monaghan just started winning kickouts.
And kicking
off scores.
And kicking worldies.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, they had that bit of a breeze in the second half too, didn't they?
It seemed to help.
Yeah.
It seemed to be reasonably
McManus
significant.
Kicked that late free that he probably wouldn't have kicked if he didn't have the wind with him.
The other thing in that match is, and it hasn't been said yet really, Vinnie Corey, like, that was hired as Monaghan manager after a very long and protracted process where a number of people turned the job down. He's got the backing now of the players. He's got the backing of the fans in Monaghan as well. It's completely polar opposite to what's happened in Donegal, basically. Everyone has got behind him, and he's clearly, he's kept them up in the last game in Division 1, and now they've beaten Tyrone in the Championship. So
he's kind of the Rory Kavanagh character in this whole scenario where he took the job, and
probably a year or two ahead of when he wanted to take the job. He probably wanted to get a bit more experience.
He would have always taken the job at some point. Is that the
100%?
He'd been a selector for the previous 2 years.
Yeah, with Bandy. Yeah, exactly. So probably ahead of time, but doing good things. What a game.
I was a little bit surprised with Tyrone defending that final attack, in that they didn't get more bodies behind the ball quickly. I thought when that final point went over that they got at the other end, that they were going to win it from there, because I think it was a pretty
McCurry
5 seconds left.
McCurry's point, which we're all going to forget about.
Yeah.
So, but there was a McCurry ball in the second half over to Con Kilpatrick, which was one of the great GAA passes of all time.
Absolutely.
And you're like, okay, it's a complete afterthought in the aftermath of the game.
It was a brilliant match. Like, that was one of the best football championship matches we've probably had in the last 5 or 6 years.
The Monaghan Armagh game a few years ago in Ulster was similar in the sun. It was a lovely open game as well, but that one probably stands out for me.
Just the 9 minutes at the end of the game as well. It was like, it was supposed to be 6 and we're still going here. They've created another chance, so we have to let them take it. You don't.
No.
You actually don't have to let them take that chance.
Yeah, you felt like the referee. Sometimes the referees in Gaelic football try to let the game peter out to a draw or some sort of tight conclusion, but it was just one of those matches that you could not take your eyes off it, especially in the second half. The intensity of it, and I think that was one word Conor McManus used after the match consistently. It was just Monaghan knew they had to up the intensity. They're going to have to up it again for Derry, but it makes the Ulster Championship just fascinating, because either team could win that match, Monaghan or Derry. Derry have shown some frailties, but they're still an unbelievably good team, definite All-Ireland contenders.
I do think that if you lose that game, you should not be too emotionally invested in it at this stage, because I think that now, having beaten this Tyrone side in Tyrone, Monaghan should be thinking we could win the All-Ireland this year.
Well, yeah, you can certainly make an argument for probably 6 or 7 teams at this stage. Monaghan have to be included in them. Are you
going to win against Derry and then win an Ulster final and then win 2 games to get to an All-Ireland quarter-final?
That's the thing. That's why I'm not too... 4 more wins. Well, this is it puts the jeopardy kind of out the window a little bit. If you lose to Derry by a point or 2, but you play really well, is that the end of the world? Probably not.
No injuries, no sending off.
Exactly, because
the great thing about it is no one knows how this new format's going to pan out, and squad depth is going to be very important.
I think that's the key thing, right?
I think Galway are in a really good position actually. They've found new players. They have the confidence from last year.
Yeah.
They have a lot going for them. And then, I mean, you look at Tyrone. They lost yesterday, okay, but like they're going to have 4 weeks now to really get their act together.
I was impressed by, like we already mentioned, Derek Hannon, but Matty Donnelly pulling the strings as he usually does. Brian Kennedy, it looks like I don't know what Brian Kennedy eats for dinner, but that man is the BFG. Like he looks like he was made in a lab. He's that big. Himself and Kilpatrick in midfield are just brilliant.
Yeah.
And they have the likes of Ronan McNamee as well back in there and doing man marking jobs.
Kilpatrick fisting the point instead of taking a shot. There you go. That's the difference in winning and losing in the Ulster Championship.
Do you like Ryan O'Toole?
Anything else, Carl?
Just to mention the Camogie finals yesterday, Galway retaining their Division 1 crown. They beat Cork by 213 to 112. Historic win for Kerry. They won their first title in the Division 2A grouping with a 14 points to 13 defeat of Meath. The golf last night went to a playoff. Matt Fitzpatrick holding off Jordan Spieth to win the RBC Heritage. Both players finished on 17 under at Hilton Head. Matt Fitzpatrick with a great shot into the third playoff hole to make a birdie 3 and win there. Shane Lowry ended on 1 over par in the World Snooker Championship later this morning. Irish interest with Mark Allen in action against China's Fan Zhengji at the Crucible.
It was a big weekend for lads named Ben Healy, because our cyclist Ben Healy finished second behind Podcar in, where was that race? Somebody was.
It wasn't in Dingle beside you, was it?
It wasn't. No, somebody was telling us to mention that, and I've now absolutely butchered it. But yeah, this is a breakout second season for him as a professional cyclist. So
Holland was in Holland.
We'll keep an eye on his performances across the rest of the year as well. But at 8:54, Carl, thanks very much for that. We're heading to South Africa. Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are you?
What's going on?
It's hot here. It's warm. I think obviously the Munster fans that are here are very happy after the weekend, and the Leinster ones, of course, as well, up in Joburg. But yeah, it was a good weekend for the two away teams, Leinster and Munster.
The Munster performance was really, really important, because it guarantees Champions Cup qualification for next year, right?
Well, it more or less guarantees, I think, unless Benetton or Scarlets can win the Challenge Cup, it may mean then that you have to finish at least 6th, that's 7th or 8th, because of the Welsh Shield. Cardiff will probably win that, and they'll not be in the top 8 of the league, so they'll take a European place. And if Scarlets or Benetton, who won't make the top 8 either, were to win the Challenge Cup, it would mean only the top 6 who finish in the top 6 in the league will go through. But more or less, you would say probably 90% sure that Munster will have European rugby next year and be in the playoffs. I don't think anyone would have expected a bonus point win against the Stormers, Ger, and it was a great performance. It was full of grit, determination, but also tactically they were so much better than, we'll say, a couple of weeks ago against the Sharks. You know, they obviously had a good first half against the Sharks in the Champions Cup, but one of the big differences this time, I think, was defensively. They weren't conceding tries and line breaks, and I know they got broken a few times, but so much better organised. They conceded 18 tries in the previous 3 games, and their defence was a real key. And the other one was probably the breakdown. Peter O'Mahony was phenomenal. Gavin Coombs had a huge second half, but O'Mahony throughout the whole game was just tormenting the Stormers' breakdown, and he was brilliant, as many of the other Munster players were.
So what's the turnaround in performance? Where did it come from?
I think it came from, obviously, you know, when you have a situation where you concede 55 points, you look back on it and players analyse, coaches analyse. So I think they would have looked at the Sharks game. Obviously, the heat played a role in that, and the humidity in Durban, and they were playing against a very powerful side. So people often ask, how do you stop that power and physicality? And well, you've got to get in early and stop them getting their rolling maul going, and really be on the money at the breakdown and be accurate, and your execution around ball placement, all that kind of stuff. So I think Munster were so much better at that. There was moments in the game where the Stormers flexed their muscles and it was worrying, but the start of the game gave them confidence and belief, and I just think their breakdown was so much better. Their speed of movement on the ground to get in, support players, recycle the ball, and tactically they played very well. They made some mistakes and errors, I'm sure they look back on it, but they were a real nuisance to the Stormers' breakdown for the whole game, and defensively they were connected, and they got good line speeds and didn't allow the Stormers kind of play their game that they're so good at. They're very, very quick, and they're an ambitious side who throw the ball around a lot. So they didn't really let the Stormers ever get into that flow for a long periods of time, and came up with many big moments in the game. I think the most crucial part for me was that 10 minutes after half time, easily could have dropped the heads because, Stormers had that surge of pressure and scored just before half-time to make it 12-all. And the crucial part then was those 10 minutes in the second half. Stormers had 3 or 4 opportunities. Peter O'Mahony steals one line-out. They kick to the corner, the 5-metre line-out. Peter O'Mahony steals it. On the far side of the field, Gavin Coombs steals a ball in a maul that the referee, nobody knows how he got it, but they turned it over. And then the Calvin Nash tackle in the corner on Senatla, I think, or Hartzenberg. I'm not sure. I can't remember which one of the wingers it was, but he made a brilliant tackle in the corner. They got those breaks. They kind of created their own little bit of luck as well, because you see Shane Daly had a similar type break and he scores the try. So they, that 10 minutes after half-time won the game for Munster, and they were superb. I think they could have easily dropped the head. So obviously there was a lot of desperation, and that can fire you up and drive you on. But they played really well tactically as well, and it was amazing for them to get a bonus point win given their form coming into this game.
We should give a special mention as well, Quinny, to your fellow Tipperary man, Diarmuid Barron. Couple of tries and an impressive performance overall, I think.
Yeah, right across the board, I think. But, he played very well. He got 2 tries, and their Munster's maul was really good. It started brilliantly. R.G. Snyman, John Klein, they kind of had big games as well. They're big players. Obviously, people are going into the game talking about the front row and the worry and the concern there based on what we saw the last day. Stephen Archer had to play 80 minutes. Phenomenal. Keenan Knox comes on for Gavin Coombs at the end of the game. But Jeremy Loughman as well. He hasn't played in a while. He was outstanding. He's up against arguably the best tight head in Franz Malherbe. And for Loughman to come in, and Munster scrum was very, very good. So right across that front row, I think they deserve to get credit for this performance. And it's a big, big, big performance. From the result is just massive, because the implications of losing these 2 games and not being in Europe were very big for Munster. So right across the board, I think the effort levels and the energy they brought and the fight and grit and determination, I think they shocked the Stormers. The Stormers coach John Dobson was speaking afterwards, and he had nothing good to say about his team. I'm sure when they look back at the game, they know they can be better. But Munster read it really, really difficult for him. And Diarmuid Barron had a big, big game, which was great to see, because not just from the tries, the tackles he made and the carries around the field were superb.
Conor Murray was good for Ireland in the Six Nations, but didn't get the start in Europe or the Champions Cup rather, obviously in South Africa, and got the start on Saturday and played well. Was it a mistake in retrospect not to pick him in the Champions Cup?
I don't know. I think at the time his form wasn't great. It's a good sign of the character that he's responded really well and didn't let that kind of define his season or his career, and kind of let his career peter out. Not being in the 23 for Munster's Champions Cup game against Northampton at Thomond Park, the easy thing to do there would be, well, maybe it's not, the easy thing is probably the wrong phrase, but you could drop your head there and you could kind of be frustrated and negative about it. He's chose the opposite, which is a great kind of example for young players when they get dropped. I had plenty of experiences that in my career, and they're not easy. And you think of the perception that people then have of you as a player, that you're not in the 23, and so he's responded really well. I thought he was really, really good the other night. He was very composed, made a lot of good decisions. His kicking game, his passing, and he was, he kind of was a real good leader for the team, made a lot of tackles as well. So
you'd say his first choice now for the rest of the season, on the basis of the fact that they didn't start him against the Sharks and they got hammered, and he starts this game and there's more, it feels like there's more control, and particularly when they've decided that they know who their out half is, it feels like as well.
Well, if you play well, look, for Craig Casey, I don't think he had his best game against the Sharks. He's a very, very talented player, but they've gone with Conor Murray for this game, and he's played really well and shown his experience. And he's got to back that up. Whether he'll start this week, whether Craig Casey will start, I don't know. But he's responded in a really positive way, Ger, that for any sports person who is in that situation, it's a good decision to kind of pick yourself up, be positive with the team. And that's remembered as well. And a lot of players spoke about that, how positive he was for that week that he was dropped. He wasn't negative. He didn't have a kind of a sulky head in him. He was trying to help players, help the team. So that's really important, and that's a good example and message. But he's put himself in a position now that he looks like he's kind of won back that jersey for a moment. But that can change very quickly.
Yeah.
Craig Casey is a superb player.
Let's talk about the 10s. Is Joey Carberry in South Africa?
Yeah, he is. He's with the team. He warmed up with them. He was there with them, and he's gone through a tough time, hasn't he? Because again, you're talking about perception and where he's been, and the level he's been at for a number of years, being second choice for Ireland, playing plenty of games, being involved all the time, and now he finds himself for this game for the first time outside the Munster 23. So again, he's going to have to kind of battle this kind of tough period out, and I still believe he's a quality player. The decision to go with Ben Healy and go with Jack Crowley starting instead of him a couple of weeks ago, it's purely down to tactics and what the Munster coaches see. And they've gone with Crowley and picking Ben Healy and on the bench at the weekend. Obviously, was a big moment for Ben Healy. Very disappointing for Joey Carberry. But it's totally tactical, and that's the way the Munster coaches have gone. And I think Ben Healy was very good when he came off the bench. Sorry,
you do wonder there if what's going to happen next season, if maybe Ben Healy regrets the fact that he won't be there next season to compete for the 10 slot, because you see how quickly you can get into Ireland consideration, and also what happens after the World Cup when Sexton goes. So I do want to talk about Sam Prendergast and his performance. Obviously, Leinster fans very excited about the fact that he's getting the start, and at one stage in the first half it looked like the game was kind of running away a little bit from Leinster, and everybody was like, oh well, that's to be expected, this is an inexperienced side. But the second half performance was one of those, no, hang on a second, we've been unbeaten all year, we're not going to just fold our tents up here. Let's talk about Prendergast first. How did he get on?
He was superb, I think, and it's extraordinary for such a young player to come into a team that has very high expectations, obviously, and are, missing all their frontline internationals. I think it would be easy to manage Sam Prendergast and slip him in there with 10 internationals around him and think, God, that's going to protect him better. But he's obviously a strong mind, strong spirit, and they believe in his quality and talents. And anybody who watches closely the under 26 nations can see that talent and that ability. But he's obviously a strong character as well, and he was superb on Saturday, because you said it, Ger, they were 15 points down at one stage. You kind of buy into the narrative that we've good moral victory here and we've done well and we've scored a few tries and we've given it a lash. But their mentality is totally different. I think they kept believing and kept back in their pace in that second half, to score 3 tries and change the whole picture of the game, really. I think that the Lions kind of, probably switched off and thought that they're going to, overpower Leinster here and get the job done. But we've seen this from Leinster and the standards they set over the years, that you just can't shake them off. So it was a brilliant performance for him, full of control, confidence, and he's a quality player who's Leinster are very lucky to have him, and we're going to see a lot more of Sam Prendergast in the next couple of years. Yeah,
you wonder how quickly he's going to be able to force his way into the Leinster team, because obviously there's an established pecking order at the moment, but those types of performances are the ones that get you noticed and make everybody go, let's just stick him in the first team and see what happens here.
Chris Cosgrave was outstanding as well at full back. There's a couple of young players there that have incredible talent. Tommy O'Brien, having him back, he's had a bad run of injuries, and Liam Turner gets a great try as well. So a lot of good, exciting young players there that stepped up in a pretty hostile environment.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about the news that broke then that Stuart Lancaster's replacement is going to be Jack Nienaber. You'd probably be familiar with him from his time at Munster. Obviously, his exact role within South Africa, the title is head coach, and Razzie's supposed to be the director of rugby. It always felt like it was Razzie's show. So, what was your instinct when you heard this?
Initially shocked, I think, like everybody else. Didn't see that one coming. It's a great coup for Leinster. I think the level of compliments that you'd hear about Jack Nienaber and the way he can inspire players, and the Munster players loved him. I think with a less talented squad, possibly, and playing a different type of game a number of years ago when he was there with Rassie, I think he made Munster so hard to beat defensively. I think there's obviously more to his game than just being a defensive coach. I think he would have evolved over the years, but very inspirational, very motivated, incredibly on detail, and it's an incredible coup. I think that the shock that most people got and the surprise, obviously it was kept very quiet. It was going to be broken here in South Africa, so I think both Leinster and the Springboks decided to get it out before somebody else did. There's a lot of shock here. They're very surprised. Speaking to a lot of journalists at the game in Cape Town on Saturday evening, they were all very surprised. Matthew Pearce, who does the commentary for SuperSport, he's their main commentator. He did an event last week with Jack Nienaber and for 2 hours somewhere, and there wasn't a sniff or a whiff of this going on, and it was all about Springbok planning and going forward and stuff. So he says he's done it for personal reasons. He's obviously got a break clause in his contract here that allows him to leave. Razzie's, I was reading up about it, Razzie's contract definitely has one. So I presume they were both the same when they re-signed, and those contracts were supposed to go till 2025. So they obviously have a break clause in the contract that he's activating now after the World Cup, and he says it's personal reasons. So it's not a bad team to go to, is it, if you want to change the scenery and move your family? And I know that both families, I'm not overstepping the mark here, I know that Razzie's family and Jack's family loved it in Ireland, and they weren't keen to go back at the time. But obviously then the head job with South Africa and those roles came up for both of them, and they couldn't really turn that down. So maybe they want to go back to Ireland and experience it again. And it's not going to please all the Munster fans, and it is a bit surprising. But that's the nature of the business. Leinster have got, from what we can gather and what we've seen, an outstanding coach here, and it's an incredible coup for them.
As the South African team's addition to the URC and Champions Cup, is that a happy coincidence? Would that have made Leinster want to go after Nienaber a little bit more, albeit he's a brilliant coach in his own right, but would that have been an influence on the decision, do you reckon, Quinny?
I'm not sure, Shane. I don't think that would have anything really to do with it. I just think Leo would have known how good he was for Munster with, as I said, a less talented squad. Did a great job. They got Munster into a URC final at the time and semi-final of Europe. They were incredibly difficult to beat, and you hear stories coming out from coaches with all these clubs how good a coach is, and sometimes the best endorsement you can get is from players. It is from players, because the type of coach you are, the way you deal with people, all that kind of stuff. So he was loved in Limerick, and I'm sure the Leinster fans will really take to Jack Nienaber. And so I don't know if it was anything to do with picking a South African. I think Leinster have gone for one of the best coaches in world rugby. He coached the Springbok side to win a World Cup. He's done remarkably well since with them, and he's a very, very impressive CV. And again, Leo would have known what and Leinster, not just Leo, they would have known how good he was in Munster and how well liked he was. But it's a great coup for them.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Quinny, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
It's Alan Quinlan giving us his thoughts there. At 13 minutes past 9 this morning, OTB AM brought to you live with Gillette Labs. Got the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Some highlights on the OTB Podcast Network for you today. You can search OTB Football, Brian Kerr on Arsenal's draw with West Ham, the Sunday Paper Review with Conan Doherty and Jason Byrne joining Will O'Callaghan, and some GAA reaction, including Monaghan's huge win, including Vinnie Corey and Conor McManus as well as hearing from the Tyrone camp there as well. Make sure you follow OTB across our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. The Football Pod are on the road again. You might have heard the ad. They're heading to Killarney for Off the Ball's first big road show of the summer, with thanks to AIB. Tommy, Paddy and James will be bringing the Football Pod to the Great Southern Hotel on the 4th of May. That's Thursday. Join us for a brilliant night of football chat and crack with plenty of focus on the All-Ireland champions Kerry and the contenders who are coming for their throne. It's an exclusive off-air event. It's all in partnership with AIB. Check out the hashtag The Toughest for more. Go to offtheball.com/events. Anthony Moyles in studio next, talking about that Ulster quarter-final win. First, some Kenny Cunningham talking about Man United's win yesterday.
That was him at his best today.
Oh, honest to God, I haven't seen him play as well for a long time. Yeah, I haven't been overwhelmed by him this season, I've got to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of him when he operates in these kind of wide areas, which is where the manager has played him. For me, his best position is a number 10. He's a number 10 for me. And when he disciplines himself, Nathan, to play in that position, and when I say that position, I mean basically in behind the opposition, the midfielders, in those kind of little pockets, he really does impact the game. And we saw him do that today. And the reason he did it, again, like I said, because he looked at Ericsson further down the pitch and said, you know what, I don't have to go and get on the ball. I trust him to get on the ball and find me in these little pockets, and that's what he did from the very start of the game. The connection between them two in particular was absolutely fantastic. And I saw more crosses from Bruno into the box from wide positions. I saw him get into the box and try and get on the end of crosses today, and the reason he could do that was he was keeping a higher position, Nathan. When he comes deeper and hits a big switch of play and the cross comes into the box, there's too much ground for him to make up. But because he was within 10 yards of Martial today, when the ball went wide and crosses came into the box, he was looking to get on the end of things. Could have scored with a header first half, could have scored with a header again second half, hit the crossbar with a fantastic shot. So he really impacted the game in the last third. I think we saw Bruno Fernandes at his best today, his discipline best.
You're listening
to OTB AM. Off the Ball will be hosting a live UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat, and it's coming your way on May 3rd, live from the Mansion House in Dublin.
We'll be joined by some great guests, including UEFA Champions League winner John O'Shea. Our guests will share memorable stories and reminisce about their careers.
We'll also look ahead to the latter stages of the competition.
This is an exclusive off-air event and tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to offtheball.com/events and we'll see you on the night.
Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Anthony Moyles is with us. We will do the full Monaghan thing in a few minutes' time, but I did we've talked about it a little bit. But I do think Derry are probably delighted with the way that game finished, that there's this outpouring of emotion afterwards. Conor McManus very quickly afterwards, like, this is just the first round of Ulster. In the interview that he was doing with Orla Bannon on BBC. Yeah. It's just the first round of Ulster. Yeah. But it didn't feel that way.
For Monaghan or for Derry?
I think for Derry, they're like, this is great. You guys, you go off and you party. Yeah. Shane is going to be draped in the Monaghan flag as the...
There was no partying last night. It was a very relaxed. It was different to previous years. There was no getting carried away. It was there not? Smiley heads leaving Oma, but it was like, well, on to Derry now. There was definitely a different feel to it.
That's definitely good to hear. Yeah, I like Derry will be absolutely delighted, licking their lips. There was very little in that performance really for Fermanagh. Once they got the early goals, that was kind of it. You know, Fermanagh obviously wanted to try to hang in the game for as long as they can, or as long as they could. And once they opened them up, and again, it's this old adage of having people back, but actually people not really doing their job. You know, having bodies there, but actually being pulled and dragged. And Derry had the nous to be able to do that. You can actually hear on the commentary sometimes. I don't know who it was roaring. It could be Gallagher. More than likely, it was roaring. But you could hear on the commentary, "No sweeper, no sweeper." And I like flicked the eyes up, and you could see that although they had bodies, they had been pulled and there was actually no one on the D. And then as soon as the players heard that, they literally turned and went straight down the middle. So the communication from all the angles and the various different bits and bobs, it'll be good for Derry. Derry obviously will get that Dublin performance out of their system, but again, they won't get carried away. I don't really. It was horses for courses yesterday. They'll revert back to what they're more used to against Monaghan and whoever else they come up against, because they were a bit more open and a bit more kind of progressive, really, yesterday. But they could afford to be, really. You know, Fermanagh weren't. You know,
we'll preview that game properly when it comes around. So let's get to the story of the weekend, and that is Monaghan's victory.
Tyrone's failure to close the game out.
Well, that too, also, yeah.
So very un-Tyrone, like, you know, a 5-point lead at half time, brilliant in the first half, and I did feel like it was essentially game over at that point. Part of me was wondering, I might wander off and flick around and have a look at what else and catch up with some of the stuff, because we've seen this movie a million times, but we hadn't.
There wasn't much else on, to be honest. Well, a couple of things, and again, I'm not doing the old hindsight 2020 job, but that's the way of it. Yeah, sorry. I thought they were. So Monaghan were unbelievably efficient in the first half. Unbelievably efficient. Tyrone were a slight bit wasteful.
I thought that actually that was in favour of Tyrone, because there's no way Monaghan are going to be able to keep this up. That felt a little bit like Dublin's performance against Donegal back in the All-Ireland semi-final, where everything they kicked went over and they were all world-beating. Like, there's no way they can keep that up. I mean, you can't.
Well,
it turned out you can.
Well, they can't. You know, sorry, they can when they have the quality that, you know, such as McManus. You know, and I know you guys were chatting about it earlier on. Like, I watched it so closely that I think he touched the ball in the first minute, about a minute 20.
Yeah.
Bar a free, he didn't touch the ball again till the 15th minute, which was an absolutely unbelievable score. On the right-hand side, underneath the stand, with his right foot, he makes a little jink, makes the space, gets the ball, drops his left shoulder, comes on and kicks it like into literally nothing. It's curling around the post and drops over, and he never took a bounce. He just bang hit it. And for a fella, like, it just shows you the confidence, the ability that he has. And I know that, like, I mean, we're going to get back to the game, but like, I mean, I played against him, Ger, when he was a half back, and he was like, you'd see bigger legs hanging out of a nest, you know. And now to put the work in, because he's physically so strong as well.
Yeah.
You know, he's coming up against Hampsey, he's coming up against different fellas of this who are big men trying to bully him. Not a bother. So the amount of work he has put in, by the way, to completely change his body shape. You know the way young lads, you see fellas saying, oh, well, he's a wispy type of player. That guy has put in, never mind his ability, right? Like, because some fellas also who have that ability kind of say, oh, well, I'll be able to, you know, come on the loop, I'll be able to get scores. But he has been so diligent and obviously committed over the years. It's fun. It's unbelievable to see. And it's paying off, because his body is honed now, and at 35 or 36 years of age, he's still able to do what he did yesterday.
There's an element too, and it's hardly a new thing, but he distracts defenders then, because you have to have a couple of lads keeping some sort of an eye on him, and it leaves the space for the likes of Bannigan, O'Hanlon, McCarthy get a couple of nice scores in the second half as well. Yeah. Jack McCarron didn't have his greatest day yesterday, but those options are there for Monaghan, that other forwards are maybe freed up for a little bit of space because of the focus on McManus.
And they didn't panic. You know, the one thing about Monaghan, so if you break down the game, I felt Monaghan never panicked. They made some alterations, which I thought were really smart alterations, in that they took off the young lad, the cornerback, and it wasn't because he was having a poor game, but they needed a bit more from the half back line, which they got with McCarthy when he went back there. Because what happened was, and we spoke about this before, Burns drops back very quickly for Tyrone into a kind of a sweeping role. So they said, right, if he's going to do that, we will attack down that side and try to take him and try to make as much forward momentum as we can in that situation. They also upped their intensity. And I know, like, I mean, people will say, oh, well, you know, it's not all about that. But it is about that. Like, I mean, they got much more physical with them and hands-on. Every single time Canavan or McCurry or any of the guys inside got a ball in the second half, they had a Monaghan player right beside them, tackling, pushing them out. They turned them over probably 4 or 5 times, where they crowded them out, they got their hands up, didn't commit fouls. And on the far side, Tyrone gave some very soft frees. Now, I thought the referee was a bit picky in the first half. It was a great game yesterday, but there was a lot of stop-start in that first half from the referee. I thought he was being overly finicky, and he never really let the intensity increase.
There was an amazing dribble that he called for overcarrying.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not really sure that was.
Yeah.
I think that because it was almost, he was so fast for the ref, and as a result, it felt like everything was being called, and it certainly felt like some of the frees at the end that were given where there's going to be an equaliser here. But
yeah, felt a bit like that. But I suppose, yeah, so it's dropping back a bit. You know, Tyrone would have been very, very happy. You're right, Ger. Like, I mean, they could have probably went in 7 or 8 up, right? And they probably should have gone in 7 or 8 up. Not from opening Monaghan up, but I thought McCurry snatched at a few from bad angles that you're probably saying, really, you know, it would have been an unbelievable score to get, but you know, okay, he was probably feeling confident. I just thought they should have been a little bit further ahead. Monaghan tightened up. Monaghan got on the front foot a bit more. There was obviously a factor with the breeze. It didn't really come across that way, but there obviously
what was it like
at
the thing? Why
the breeze didn't feel significant to me?
Right? No.
Certainly being there, I wouldn't have said it's a really breezy day in Omagh.
Right. Yeah.
But obviously for the players on the pitch, McManus said it himself that he found the shooting easier in the second half.
Yeah.
I think a lot of more players were taking pot shots in the second half for Monaghan. So it must have been a significant swirl on the pitch.
Yeah,
which
it felt out. But you know, it's interesting to see. But some players from Monaghan, like O'Connell, O'Connell has played hardly any football this year.
Yeah,
he was obviously injured. But his performance yesterday in midfield was like, if you watch the goal at the very end, he's the one who passes the ball off and is going back for the return. Like his performance, because the two midfielders for Tyrone are playing at the top of their game at the moment.
They were good, yeah.
You know, they were good, and they kept mixing it. Remember, we were saying that Kennedy was moving into full forward sometime and creating that kind of a big threat in there where they put that diagonal ball in. They did that a couple of times actually. But you know, Lavelle I thought was quieter, but the work rate he put in the second half was absolutely phenomenal. But Tyrone's Achilles heel again, Ger, which is running straight down the middle at them, pulling Hart out, opening up that 6th channel and going straight. That was ultimately that caught them in the end. Because if you watch the goal, there's actually 3 or 4 Tyrone guys ahead of the ball, but as the ball gets transferred across a couple of Monaghan players, Monaghan fellas actually end up beyond them. So someone stops working. So actually, I know we'll talk about the opportunity and the goal chance, but actually there's 2 more options for him. There's a man inside where he could have hand passed, and actually O'Connell is coming as well. So they nearly could have walked in it in net.
Yeah. At the end, though, it felt a little bit like this game is going to overtime. I'm going to not kick the extra point in American football. I'm going to go for 2. And everybody's like, oh, it's the analytics guys. It's like, there's the calculation in his head in that second is like, going for it.
Well, what are you doing in that situation?
The whole world is not doing that.
I'm probably falling over myself as I get the ball, and the panic sets in. the enormity of the situation. Look, his attitude after the game was phenomenal. By the way, never mind that, he went in and picked up Canavan in the second half.
Oh yeah.
And he snuffed. Canavan got one score where he had to come out really far and get on the ball, and he was facing the ball, and he got a great score now, but he snuffed Canavan out that second half. He had an unbelievable game, and that's his first year really playing.
In the 1997 All-Ireland hurling final, John Leahy gets a chance and goes for goal instead of taking an equalising point for Tip against Clare, and it's been spoken about ever since.
Yeah.
So like it's a very, very high risk with almost no reward, right? But then the reward is like, look,
the reward is phenomenal. Yeah. And he wasn't really 1-on-1, because I don't know who the Tyrone, the 23, I think was. I think actually
Sludden lost him a little bit. Sludden went to the ball and kind of gave the run.
I actually think that the other Tyrone guy puts Morgan slightly off, and Morgan never expected it. Like, you could see his reaction after. He's like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
He was fully expecting it either to be palmed across.
I thought Morgan had a great game, by the way.
He played very well. Listen, it was top. It was unbelievably high quality match. You know, the ball, the passing, there was very few misplaced passes. The kickouts were phenomenal. The pressure on the kickouts,
fielding the Monaghan kickouts.
And begging.
It's so high risk, but it's like, it's so exciting. It creates this mad sense of jeopardy from the kickouts.
Well, it's phenomenal. There was a great angle behind the goal where you see one of Beggin's kickouts, and they empty out left channel of as he's looking out, and they get an easy one away, and straight away next kick out you see Morgan, and he's standing right there. He's like so they have to put it out right, obviously, and then they give the one ball up, which ends up in the goal, where he goes short and they get dispossessed. But then Morgan is kind of hiding literally, and then coming for kickouts. But it is high risk, high jet. But it's fantastic stuff.
It's funny that like Ryan O'Toole exudes such confidence after the match, but he plays with a lot of these lads at club level. So he would play with Scottstown with Beggan, Shane Carey, Conor McCarthy, Kieran Hughes, Darren Hughes, a lot of this Monaghan team. So it kind of familiarised himself with the Monaghan setup in his first year. The interesting thing that McManus said afterwards was that the use of Beggan as the quarterback. It's not a new thing in Gaelic football, but that diagonal ball, particularly for the Stevie O'Hanlon goal into Carl Gallagher, who plays it off, like that sort of thing works very, very well.
Well, we talked about it a few weeks ago, which is this idea of having a sweeper keeper, but not really affecting the game. So it's just another set of hands to ship a pass on. That for me is just a lot of risk for very little reward.
Yeah.
Because you're bringing somebody up, you're leaving all of this, and actually you cause confusion in the back line, literally just for someone to get it. He doesn't do that. He gets it and he probes with passes. He put another pass out over the top of a Tyrone player. So he's always constantly, that pass in particular was an excellent pass. I thought O'Hanlon was really good yesterday. That was an unbelievable battle with Myler. Because Myler looked like he was winning the arm wrestle. Yeah. But O'Hanlon never gave up. You know, a couple of times he got done for overcarrying badly by the referee because he does this little jink and he is gone. And I kind of thought to myself, because himself and Myler were having a right ding-dong. Myler was giving him plenty every time. And I was saying, he might shirk away from this, and when he got the pass for the goal, he only had one thing on his mind, and I thought he had a really, really great game. He carried the fight to them unbelievably well. Tyrone, my only worry, it's a thing, I suppose, with Tyrone, in the sense that, again, I don't know where we. The big thing about, I suppose, some games is, and you see this a lot in American football, when a team can sit back at half-time and work you out a little bit, I think you have to go out the second half
and do something different.
Yeah. So Tyrone went out the second half and felt, we'll continue to do exactly what we've been doing, and it'll work. But Monaghan had said, you're not going to use Canavan and McCurry anymore, and we're going to get bodies back in there, and we're going. So I'm kind of going, where's the change up? You know, and like McShane has obviously gone so far down the pecking order there in Tyrone, because I would have thought a big man. Now I know they brought on the younger lad, but he came on around midfield, and they were starting to get a little bit wiped out around there too. So they needed something different. Now Canavan took it upon himself to come out and kind of try to come in from the half forward line, but that was also a bit of desperation that they weren't getting the ball in. So they'll learn from that, but they need to.
Thing, I was trying to find out. These two teams could end up in the same group still, in the All Ireland series. Now, I think if Derry beat Monaghan, then they'll both be third seed, and so therefore, obviously, they won't.
Yeah.
But a reward for Monaghan beating Derry could be an Ulster final defeat and then Tyrone drawn, because like they always get drawn against Tyrone, right?
Oh, constantly.
You'd be like,
we always beat them earlier and then they beat us.
Great lads,
later on.
See you again.
Yeah.
Play that game in Croke Park, maybe.
It's typical. It was interesting that point as well about the second half, Monaghan changing the intensity, because Monaghan came out for the second half a lot earlier than Tyrone did, and that's not really a Monaghan thing. Traditionally, Monaghan will wait in the dressing rooms for quite a significant portion of time, and like you could see that the 6 Monaghan forwards get into a huddle, and Conor McManus was doing most of the talking. Michael Bannigan, who's the vice captain this season, was doing a lot of talking as well, but they were clearly focused at the start of the second half.
Absolutely.
The defenders did the same and got into a little group.
Yeah.
They were ready to go.
They were ready to go. And actually, I think O'Toole mentioned that when they looked at some of their stats at half time, it showed that their intensity levels weren't where they were. So what is that? It's turnovers predominantly, and it's tackle count. And even the forwards getting back and helping out, that wasn't really happening. It's there is that thing of the championship and where they will end up and all those different things, but Monaghan will absolutely take that, because I was still questioning their Mayo win, because people, it was essentially, wasn't it, a first team, a Mayo team, but we've seen what's obviously happened in Mayo the last couple of weeks. But for them to do what they do, the one thing that amazes me is, and you don't need to comment on this, Shane, but I look at, like, we were slagging a couple of weeks ago about the 06, I think, league final, and look at the
05,
the virtues of say Kildare or Meath against Monaghan. Like, Monaghan have a small playing pool, tiny playing pool, and they are absolutely eking every single last drop out of that playing pool and out of their ability and their resources to continuously. I don't know what the year is for Division 1 and how many years they've been there now.
2015 they was there.
But that,
10 years
and doing what they're able to do. No, it doesn't matter that they're not winning all that. They are there and they're competitive continuously.
They must now consider themselves, and they've got to stop this. Look, it's Ulster, and we'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I don't think they are this season. But I really don't think they are.
I really hope that's the case, because, like, I've said before, I remember speaking to somebody steeped in Monaghan GA, and they were like, look, we'll never win All-Ireland, but we could win an Ulster. And since then they have won their Ulsters, in fairness. But I do think that like they must be looking at, there's nobody who they could get in an All-Ireland quarter-final or semi-final that they wouldn't give themselves a chance against now on the basis of everybody being fit, right?
Sorry, group setup is perfect for Monaghan. A team like Monaghan, 3 league games essentially, home, away, neutral. Monaghan love a little bit of jeopardy. It's set up nicely, and I think the Derry game, as we say, like it doesn't really have the meaning that it might have otherwise had. Monaghan don't care about winning Ulster this year. It'd be lovely, but the group is the focus.
I hope so.
I think so.
They're
but
contenders.
Yeah.
But also, you know, they won't get ahead of themselves, and Derry is the next challenge. But the challenge then is you're playing one of the top 4 teams. That's it. So you're playing another team who are contenders for the All-Ireland.
You'd give them a chance against Derry, you'd give them a chance against Mayo. Kerry and Dublin, I would make favourites against Monaghan. Like 3 to 5 point favourites in that game at this stage, right? But everybody else, I'm like, I think Monaghan are going to give them their full of it. And even then, if Monaghan get their tactics right and understand in it early enough, so it's not a 5 point lead at half time for Kerry or Dublin, you don't let them get into that stage. You make those changes a bit earlier, and like this is Vinnie Corey's first season as
also
manager.
Desi Ward, who's a fulcrum of that Monaghan team, was injured yesterday, was named in the team but didn't make it. Carl O'Connell ironically came in for him, so Desi could be back for the Derry game, which would be a massive plus.
Yeah, it would be a big plus. But, you know, I suppose the McManus factor is a big factor. You know, he what did he get, 9 yesterday?
Yeah, 9.
It is a big factor.
He was feeling the shoulder after one of the ones in the first half. I'm like, oh no. Then no difference.
And McCarron had an off day, but I felt sorry for McCarron because I think he was trying to play that quarterback where he was coming out to the top of the D and he was trying to be the provider of the ball inside, and it just wasn't working for him, and it wasn't really working for the team, really, that setup. McCarron is never going to annihilate you with that type of pace in the full forward line, so probably finding a role for him, which could be an 11, or something different. I think they need to get a bit more out of him because the over-reliance on McManus is there. But then, of course, you'd say on the flip side, well, Tyrone are probably over-reliant maybe a little bit on Canavan. Certainly the stats would show you that yesterday. But you always need the ace in the hole, and McManus's performance, be it from place balls or from play yesterday, not only does he obviously execute unbelievably well, but as you say, he draws players to him. The squad depth is probably a question.
And that's why the groups might not be great for them.
Well, I have to say, even Sean Jones yesterday coming off the bench, he didn't really show what he's capable of, but he has lit up the under-20s.
You want a handy group. That would be the other thing that could help them. One last thing, I wouldn't also write Tyrone off after this either. I think that's it's great learning for them.
Great learning for them, but again, we questioned earlier on the season the camp, and the mood in the camp. So they lose a game. That's a sickener for them yesterday. That is a sickener. There's no doubt about it. Like, I mean, they'll be saying at half time, we do X, Y, Z, we see this game out, we could win by 5 or 6 or 3 or 4. They end up losing, scratching their head and kind of going, I would say there will be a lot of analysis of what went on, the options that were taken, maybe a little bit of lack of intensity, thinking we do have this. And the question mark would be, Ger, well then does it break them tighter, or does it start to show?
What do they do for the next 5 weeks? Do they go back and play club? What would you advise? Club football? I reckon they will go back and play some club.
You'd let them off for at least 2 weeks. I think that's what you would do, and let them off and see how that goes, and let it get out of their system. They're not going to lose anything, and then you bring them in 2 or 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks before, and you say, right, we're going to learn what we need to do, and then we push on.
All right, Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million.
No better, lads.
On tomorrow's show, Harriet Pryor on Liverpool Leeds tonight. Champions League preview ahead of tomorrow's second legs. Young Racing Driver of the Year, Alex Denning, and plenty more besides. Right now, Sunday Paper Review. Have a magnificent Monday.
One that definitely gets a huge amount of coverage, lads, front and back page today, including to the point that the Mail on Sunday are taking credit for saving the Grand National. Is actually on the front of the Mail on Sunday today, but on the back they've serialised the comments which come from AP McCoy. So the context of this is the Entry Grand National. 3 more horses died in the 175th running. They were Hill 16, Dark Raven and Envoy Special. Hill 16 died after the race after a fall at the first. 62 horses have now died at the Entry Racing Festival since 2000, including 16 in Grand Nationals in that period. On the track, the favourite Cork Rambler won the race. Sligo jockey Derek Fox was on board there after the race was delayed by animal rights protesters for around about 15 minutes. And AP McCoy was venting his fury, as the paper puts it, Dominic King's piece, on the back of the Irish Mail on Sunday. And it was AP McCoy's comments which came on ITV Racing, where basically he said they're attention seekers and, quote, unfortunately we're giving them attention. These people don't have any understanding of horses and how well they're cared for, end quote. And also Lucinda Russell, who was the winning trainer of Cork Rambler, well, the co-trainer of Cork Rambler at least, had said as well, it all seems pointless. She said it's a real pain in the neck. Are the protesters doing it for themselves or for the horses? Jason, I'll let you go first on this one, because obviously this has got a tremendous amount of attention, the protests that took place. They were flagged up early in the week. There were discussions, I think, on Sky News, on GB News during the week that this was going to happen. And animal rights protesters were saying that they would be trying to bring the most famous steeplechase in the world to a stop yesterday. In the end, it was a 15-minute break. The racing community have very strongly come out and condemned it. What's your take on the coverage in the papers of it today?
Coverage in the paper seems to be definitely in unison with the racing community. Just that they don't, maybe, as AP said, they shouldn't be getting airtime. But like, it just sets a worrying thing in terms of, are we going to get to the stage where a protester is killed here? Because two of them have tried to glue themselves to a fence, and I know there's been several close calls with things like this where protesters have just been managed to be evicted from a track just as horses were about to come trundling down towards them, So that is the worrying thing. They probably did get what they wanted in terms of the exposure. I think they used ladders to gain access to the complex. I've been at entry before. You have to add it to them in terms of how they got in and how they managed to evade all the heavy security and actually get onto the track, given that this had been flagged as a potential possibility. I see Ed Chamberlain coming out fighting as well. He's obviously the main anchor of ITV's racing coverage as well, defending how the horses are treated and the care that they get and the 6-star pampering, as he described it, in the stables and away from the track and the big racing days and that. And, I suppose it doesn't bode well then when a couple of horses do have to be euthanized after the race itself because their injuries are so damaging. But David Walsh made a good point in the Sunday Times as well in a brief comment piece. I think it's just inside the sports section. He obviously wrote it live after the national that maybe just the field is a bit too large in terms of 40 that are named initially, and then you obviously have your few non-winners. But I know a lot has been done in terms of safety for the jockeys and the horses, but the field and the length of the race just seem to maybe getting a wee bit too stretched. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm no expert on the racing either, but like, the protesters did get what they wanted. They didn't get the race stopped, but they did get the exposure that they were looking for. They did manage to get onto the track, and they managed to get the biggest race in the calendar held up for 15 minutes. So the racing purists will say that it didn't affect the race itself, but to hold up that race for 15 minutes is a significant achievement. But there's no doubt, like, these horses are bred to race. They're not, they wouldn't be here if there was no race, and David made that point as well. So that's what they're here for. That's what they're bred for. And they do get huge attention and love and care, and that has to be considered here as well. So it's a really, really tricky debate. It's going to cause a lot of tension and a lot of different views and opinions from today and on through the rest of the week as well, no doubt. So it's a tricky one, Will.
Yeah, I mean, Conan, I would suggest that the tone is very different from the front of these papers to the back of the papers.
Yeah.
Jenny what's found in the back 10 pages has been a little bit like, look, Brow Scott's got his piece, which is just across from David Walsh's in the Times, where it's spread across pages 2 and 3. And his title is Favoured Rises Above the Chaos. A very much feeling of, it was this protest, some of the horses may well have even been spooked in the 15-20 minutes before the race. And the race took place, and there's been a winner of the race in Cork Rambler, who he has said was as impressive as Red Rum. And he's even got a little piece in here, which has been cut from his report 50 years ago when Red Rum won his first one. Said that the finish was that strong, it actually stands up there with it. But that seems to be the feeling from the racing writers, from the commentators, from those who've been interviewed, which is, this happened, the race happened regardless, and it was almost a triumph that it took place despite the attempts to stop it. While in the front pages, there's a lot more focus on what's probably coming from the animal rights groups.
Yeah, I think a lot of the coverage is saying that they didn't spoil the big day, but they did spoil the coverage of it because, as you say, it is mentioned all over the coverage. You read out one headline there, the Mail on Sunday. It's Rambler brushes off the chaos. Their back page is a quote from AP McCoy. They don't get racing. The whole back page story is AP McCoy saying they're attention seekers. So in a sense, it did spoil the coverage, even from a sporting standpoint as well. That's what they were getting into, and yeah, like it's a tricky one, as Jason says. It's one that I'm almost more comfortable talking about Rory McIlroy's psychology than getting into the depths of this. But I do remember doing a couple of pieces down with Jessica Harrington down in her stables, and down with Joseph O'Brien as well, and like just being struck, because coming from Derry, I'm not a big horse racing aficionado, but being struck by the lifestyle down there. I remember coming away from those days thinking, geez, I wouldn't mind getting into horse racing. I could live every day here in these stables, because it was just like, when we were down with Joseph O'Brien, the place is covered in snow, but the horses have to be taken out multiple times a day, and yeah, like they are treated consciously. Like they are. There's a lot of deliberate thought into everything about their life as well, like down in those stables. So that's one thing that always stuck with me, at how beautiful the landscape was, and how routine everything was, working 365 days a year to make sure that the horses were getting the treatment that they felt they needed.
Jason, I'll give you a first shout on the Lee Chin coverage from today, because there's quite a few pieces here. Mark Gallagher, I think, has written very well on page 62 of the Mail on Sunday. Mick Foley has also covered it in the Times with a kind of a wider lens on page 18 around the challenge that's required, and I think he outlines very well that this is not an isolated incident, that it's been about 10 years since Lee Chin first reported that he was racially abused, but he points out a number of incidents in the last year in particular, and even some just a few weeks ago, that this wasn't just an isolated incident at that charity match at the Carrick Swans Club from last week. But pretty strong condemnation of what happened last weekend from both Mark Gallagher and from Mick Foley today.
Yeah, and just to kind of start on Mark's piece, like when you mentioned there that Lee Chin was spoken to about this 10 years ago, like I think the perpetrators in that incident got an 8-week suspension. It kind of speaks for itself and beggars belief. I know if it happens in a GA match now, there's a 48-week ban and 96 weeks for a repeat infraction, but I still don't even think that's good enough. I think any perpetrator of something like this, inside or outside of the gates of a GA pitch, the consequences have to be severe. In terms of GA, I think the perpetrator in question here should never set foot at a match again. We've all seen the video. There was children present. Kudos to Lee's teammates for calling it out straight away and sticking up for him. And I know we've all said that, the incident's getting highlighted because it's Lee. Of course it is. Like, he's a great fella. There's no question about that. He's a magnificent role model. But Mark's piece highlights the fact that this is now quick becoming a societal issue. There's significant noise coming from, which is still thankfully a minority, the anti-immigration brigade here in this country. And that, there's just big worry over the amount of these incidents that are taking place in Ireland outside of a sporting field that are going unreported. That, they're happening on the street, they're happening in schools, they're happening in workplaces. And, Mark's piece ties in very well that the role of sport can have in damaging this. And it all starts with education in our schools, with young people, and education, with young people when they're in a sporting environment as well, because this just simply is unacceptable. Like, the Irish Network Against Racism last month revealed, this is in Mark's piece, there were 600 racist incidents recorded over the course of last year, including 136 reports of hate speech. That was a rise from 404 such incidents the year before. So those are concerning figures. They've quite clearly gone up. And it's becoming a societal issue, and it's an education issue. And in terms of GA, there should be an absolute no tolerance approach here, whether it was Lee Chin or a junior player in Kerry or wherever. It's just totally unacceptable. It's disgusting. And the video was just horrendous. It was gut-wrenching, especially the fact that there were kids present. And that's where that education needs to start, to show our young people in a sporting context or otherwise that this behaviour is just simply not acceptable.
Yeah, wider context of this then is that it's only a few weeks ago that the Under-15 Republic of Ireland team, a picture was put up and there was abuse online about the amount of black players who were on that team. There was racial abuse not that long afterwards. I think it was like later in the week against the Kerry FC players, which also happened online. The FAI said they were taking an incredibly strong line. They've been working with the Gardaí about that. In the case of this incident, which also followed a racist comment being made in a challenge game between the Waterford and Offaly Miners in a hurling game, which resulted in an Offaly player writing an apology and sending it to his Waterford counterparts. And then you have this Lee Chin incident happening at the charity game. I was talking to James Skell, who was both played against and with Lee Chin on Railway Cup teams. And he said his one takeaway was that Rory O'Connor was incredibly composed, Conan, not to actually strike the guy who had made the comments. Because Rory O'Connor goes over initially to confront him, and then you can hear Lee Chin in the background making the point that there are children right behind him where these comments have been shouted in the 69th minute of a charity game as well, which makes it, to me, feel all the more worse that someone would do that in such a circumstance. But I asked both Skell and Paul Murphy in the Hurling Pod this week if even it was the higher end, and say the GA said, actually, because of the way this incident happened, we're going to go at 96 weeks, which is the longest possible ban we can hand out at the moment. They thought 96 weeks isn't even enough.
Yeah, like, why do we need this person in 97 weeks' time? Like, what is anybody gaining from that? I think it's ridiculous. I can't wrap my head around it, to be honest. I think you're right. Rory O'Connor, I'm looking for the strong enough word. He's almost a hero for confronting it immediately. Confronting the way he did as well. And
Skell said he would have hit the fan.
And then this is the thing that I'm wrangling with myself. Like, to confront him with it to the point that, because you want to show your anger, you want to show that this is not acceptable. But I think the way he stopped it before he hit him was like, and he deserved all the kudos in the world. We're talking about reported incidents here. Like, I played in a game over a decade ago now, a club match, and one of my teammates was racially abused just in the course of an argument, and it's all anybody wanted to talk about then for the rest of the game and for afterwards as well. And it didn't go reported because the player didn't want it reported, and
the game carried on.
Yeah, the game carried on, and this is the heartbreaking thing. Then the player doesn't want that attention brought on him. Of course he doesn't. Like, and the way that was solved, and I don't know if anybody deserves credit here, but the manager of the opposing team, when he found out about it, he dragged his player into our changing room. Which I suppose, in a sense, I don't want to say brave because that's far too kind, but bringing him into the middle of the changing room and making him apologise, it's definitely making a point of him there and then. And it was him trying to deal with it, but almost that's part of the problem as well. It's like, that's it, solved now. Like, we've said sorry, let's move on. It's crazy. I don't understand how fragile you'd have to be to shout something like that in. I mean, whatever about, sometimes people see these incidents and think, well, a fair game. Lee Chin's having an argument with somebody there. Imagine you and I was having an argument in the street, and somebody just started abusing us because of where we were from. Just standing on the side, started roaring abuse at where I was from. Me and you, and this is like me and you living in Ireland as two white males here, like, so it's not like it's not like we're suffering any great deal in our day-to-day lives. But yeah, I can't wrap my head around how that's where you reach to. I know people reach to something when they want to criticise somebody, but my God, like, how is that even a criticism where somebody's parents or somebody's grandparents are from? I don't understand where this is coming from and where this trend is growing and how it's happening, but it very much is.
Yeah, I say plenty covered, particularly in those two pieces today on the Lee Chin situation. Jason, I want to ask you about the bid for Ireland to host some games at Euro 2028. I'm particularly interested because of Pascal Donohue's comments, which were yesterday, where it looks like if the Irish government now end up putting money towards Castlin Park as part of the bid, potentially the final bill for Ireland could be somewhere around €96 million in order to host the games. And Pascal Donohue is admitting that it might be difficult to actually see even a return on that investment if there was 3 or 4 games to be played on the island of Ireland at Euro 2028. I think Paul Rowan has done a pretty interesting piece on this today.
Yeah, well, fairly interesting reading from Paul. We must mention as well, from a GA point of view, there was plenty of eyebrows raised when Croke Park were taken off the bid, and I kind of had to smirk when it said in Paul's piece that, UEFA didn't want Croke Park holding an unglamorous group stage tie with only a half-full stadium, so they must have been watching the Leinster Championship recently. But yeah, it could put 240 million into the economy, which is the other thing. But like, the most significant row now, and Conan will be well qualified to talk about this too, is the Casement Park debacle. Obviously, the stadium has been closed for 10 years. It's become an absolute eyesore, and it's become a metaphorical eyesore for everybody in the Antrim and Ulster GA community. It looked like that this was going to be the great beacon of light to get it built, but now the DUP have rode their oar in, and they're objecting that the money shouldn't be given to get Casement built, and it should go towards other services in the north. So this could potentially get messy. The IFA have had to accept that Casement Park would be the venue here as opposed to their own home at Windsor Park as well. And there's that element to things here as well, the cross-border function of the bid, along with the FAA. So, like, there's, as Paul rightly points out as well, there's still a lot of there's probably still a lot of bitterness around here that the Euro 2020 games that we were all excited to host. I think it was 4 fixtures in total never took place here because of our COVID restrictions, and the other chosen cities across the continent still got to host their games as well. So there was an element of getting big matches to Dublin, but it even looks like in the current bid that the Dublin arena, as the Aviva is going to be tied at, is only going to host maybe at best a last 16 tie, 4 group games and a quarter final. So I know they were hoping to maybe have a semi-final here, especially if Croke Park was part of the bid, and maybe even Croke Park to be part of the opening ceremony as well. So it's an interesting one. There's going to be a lot of noise about this coming down the tracks as well. But from a GA point of view, I know Croke Park's omission was the big thing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going down the line, and it could all be swept, completely brushed away by Turkey's bid as well if they get it when the decision's made later in the year. I think it's due in October or November.
I think on the case in point, Conan, effectively a shovel has to go into the ground by summer 2024 to satisfy this bid. That seems a very, very short timeline for a stadium that's been fighting for funding, where there's no real sign that the DUP are going to go back in to reopen Stormont anytime soon. Yeah. And as Jason just mentioned, you DUP councillors and MLAs across the weekend saying Caisson Park should be pretty far down the totem pole of what's important now.
Yeah, well, I think anything important is pretty far down the totem pole of what's important when it comes to the DUP, and this would be important, not just for what it would do for the GA community and for Belfast. Like, Antrim is so fractured now at the minute GA wise because of the separation that's happened, because they're not playing their games in Belfast, but for what it would do for the area. Like, Jason's right to point out the COVID restrictions in 2020. Like, that would have been such a big opportunity for Ireland to show what it could do. Even have those, send the words now, proof points to show, like, oh look, this worked. This is a great festival of football when it comes here. But like, it would actually just rejuvenate that whole area, then having big international games. And like, the reality is, Windsor Park wouldn't be fit for it. It's not fit for it, and there's no plans. There's never been any petition in it. It's not going to be at the level that Caisson Park would be at.
It's way off the UEFA standard.
Way off, and the problem, of course, is England. So ideally, this would be a way cooler bid if you had the 4 associations: the Scotland, Wales, the Northern Ireland Association, and the Irish one. But England's almost like a metal hip in that, like, you need it, but you sort of wish you didn't need it, and we can't make it up without them. And I was trying to think, can we get 10 stadiums somewhere? If you bring in Croke Park, Casement Park, the Aviva, there's 3 in Glasgow, 2 in Cardiff. They're a mile apart, which is probably problematic in itself. That's still 8. We still need to build 2 more on top of Casement, which we need to build. So I don't know if those...
The Celtic bid is...
I don't think it's going to happen, though. So we do need England, unfortunately.
And England don't need the Celtic bid.
Yeah,
they really
that's
need
the strange thing. Yeah.
Really and truly. And then, of course, they had to kind of create this... it was almost artificially brought in. It had to be only 1 stadium per city, with the exception of London.
Yeah.
So therefore, you could have easily had Everton's new stadium, rejuvenated Anfield. Like, Glasgow easily has 2 stadia that could have been used in this bid, but yet they didn't want to get into that territory where it would be only a few cities. Yeah. They had to spread it around to keep everyone happy, and therefore Dublin missed out as a result. I kind of wonder if Croke Park may well become the fallback if Casement can't be completed and if the bid actually goes through. I wouldn't totally think that it's dead on arrival, but
that would be such a big shame for Belfast, I think. Even I was looking at Mark Sykes coming through into the Republic of Ireland team, and I'm like, where are all the other Belfast players? Like, where are they? There's just not a big long history of players from Belfast coming from the second biggest city in the
Casement needs a financial shot in the arm somehow.
Yeah.
And this is a possibility for funding to maybe be opened up, because it's something bigger than just the project itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've also got potentially support from the UK and Ireland financially to get it done. Yeah. This might be the only way to actually get Caisson Park and get a shovel in the ground. The rugby is where I want to finish up on, lads, because again, this kind of took a life of its own on Thursday with the report that was in the Telegraph. And Sinead Hassan, I think, writes very well on page 10 of the Sunday Independent today, and Aoife English is also writing really well about it on page 61 of the Mail on Sunday about the Ireland women's team. And Sinead Hassan has got the headline here: the reality is that Ireland are being left behind. And she also points out very nicely, Conan, that it doesn't get any easier for Ireland now. After that defeat against Italy, they've got the world's second best team in England and the best team in the Northern Hemisphere coming next time round to Cork, and it could well be a drubbing. They absolutely hammered Wales, who hammered Ireland earlier on in the championship. Ireland have been conceding tries all over the place, and the bigger part of all of this are the whistleblowing reports that come out on Thursday about, lack of things that have been made available for the women's team, some of the measures around blue shorts coming in just being PR as opposed to being something they were consulted about, players not receiving information when they've been dropped from squads. There's just a general feeling that probably Irish rugby's got a long way to come at a time when their men's team are the best team in Europe right now.
Such a lost opportunity because of that. I feel like there could have been such easy momentum coming into this tournament off the back of the last tournament. The TV rights deals that people are committed to now to showing them. Sinead's right to point out that England coming to town exactly isn't great. The fact that it's at home as well in Musgrave Park just makes it worse. I think England have played 3 games. Their points difference at the minute is 170. They've played Wales. They hammered them. Wales here in second place. It was 59-3. So this is what's facing Ireland now, and I'm saying a lost opportunity off the back of what the men have done, but it's also a lost opportunity off the back of what the women had done as well, like in building themselves into a competitive side and putting themselves into Six Nations contention and winning them and hosting a Rugby World Cup. It was such an opportunity to push on, but they never did. And the reality is, as Sinead says, they're so far down the line now. It's like night and day with what's happening with the men's team at the minute.
Yeah, I look over your shoulder right there, the Grand Slam winning team photo, which is just there 10 years ago. They weren't invited to the Aviva for the game against England this year, which I think was a mistake. I think that was a big PR mistake by the RFU. And that's something, Jason, that's brought up on just very, very simple points brought up by Aoife in the Mail on Sunday, including something as simple as, you go to the FAI website right now.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.